Chapter 2310 Detained. Chapter 2310 Detained. Wu Ye moved, while Sun Feng simply stood, hands crossed behind his back. He exuded a terrifying aura that suppressed all of them, especially Mutal. Meanwhile, Lu Yuanxin looked intently at Ling Han, fear rising in his heart. Ling Han was actually a monarch star. What kind of concept was this? Not only did monarch stars have battle prowess that far surpassed monarch tiers that were their equal in cultivation level, they were faster at cultivation as well. This meant that Ling Han would be able to catch up with him in cultivation level very soon, and then easily suppress him. Moreover, as long as Ling Han did not die before that, he would be able to reach as far as 18th Lotus Ancestral King in future. Just what kind of noble, majestic existence was that? He very much hoped that Wu Ye would kill Ling Han and forever get rid of this future problem. Ling Han humphed coldly and summoned the divine demon sword. Immediately, a cold light surged into the heavens, strong and severe. Instantly, Wu Ye withdrew and retreated, not daring to face the sharpness of the divine sword head-on. What kind of precious tool is this? How could it be so powerful? He paled in shock. Without even touching it, just feeling the sword light surging from it caused him to shiver all over. This kind of instinct was accurate. Otherwise, without even being directly struck by the divine demon sword, just the slightest touch by sword chi, and he would be losing a few limbs. Sun Feng's expression also changed. Ling Han's battle prowess looked only to be at the 8th Lotus second leaf or third leaf, far from being a match for them. Even a monarch star could not possibly defy the heavens. But it was a different story with this sword added into the equation. The aura was too shocking, possessing might to overturn the heavens and earth. Ling Han stood with his sword, alone and proud. "If you want a battle, I will oblige." Ling Han stated evenly, his eyes set on Wu Ye, a frightening killing intent emanating from his gaze. Everyone felt their hearts grow numb, feeling the blood boiling in their veins and a strong urge to roar loudly. Wu Ye remained silent for a while and then said, "Even with a god tool, so what? The gap between us is not something that a mere god tool could make up for at all. If you want to lose any limbs, just come on." Ling Han crooked a finger at him. Wu Ye sent out another palm strike, pressing down on Ling Han. He had spoken very calmly and easily, but the truth was he was extremely wary of the divine demon sword, and did not even dare to close the distance for a battle at close quarters. Instead, with his higher cultivation level, he used spiritual power to condense into regulations, which turned into a colossal palm that descended on Ling Han. Ling Han brandished his sword in a slash. Shwa! This giant hand was split in two, and both halves passed on either side of him, unable to cause even the slightest sliver of damage to him. Fuck! Wu Ye frowned deeply. His full-powered blow had actually been so easily resolved by Ling Han. Then, their goal of capturing Ling Han and teaching this brought a good lesson today would be very hard to accomplish. Who would have thought that Ling Han would actually have such a terrifying god tool? Looks like Yu Yuan will have to act personally. Sun Feng glanced at Wu Ye, and the two of them communicated this message through divine sense. Yu Yuan, the strongest elite of the 100 Battles Academy. Long ago, 1,000,000 years ago, when the 1,000 academies had battled fiercely, he had already been an 8th Lotus fourth leaf. Now that 1,000,000 years had passed, no one knew the exact details of his cultivation level. They only knew that he was increasingly fearful, and even the likes of Sun Feng would not survive a single attack from him. If he moved, then even if Ling Han possessed a god tool, it would be useless. The latter would be easily suppressed. "Let's go," Wu Ye declared. Lu Yuanxin was taken aback. They were going to leave just like that. They had come so aggressively, wanting to teach Ling Han a lesson, but they had just seen him, and they were going to call a halt? What were they playing around with here? It was all talk, no action. Wouldn't this just become a joke to others? But what could he do? Even Wu Ye and Sun Feng had given up. The three of them turned around, planning to leave. Wait. Mutal spoke up. What place do you guys think this is? Somewhere that you can come and go just as you like? Then, do you still want to invite us to dinner? Sun Feng smirked. Ling Han held a divine sword, so they could not suppress him. But if they wanted to leave, how could it be that Ling Han would be able to detain them? Mutal's expression was dark. The two greatest elites of their quarters were not here, so it could be said that he was the representative of the demon quarters. Yet now such a matter had happened, and it was naturally him that would be feeling the most humiliated. He knew that he alone could not possibly stop Sun Feng and Wu Ye. It was not doable even with Ling Han added, but the fact that he could not accept even more was these three people would just strut boldly into the demon quarters for a roam, and then leave completely unscathed. He has to stay, Mutal said, pointing at Lu Yuanqing. No matter what, he could not allow the three of them to withdraw completely unscathed. He had to detain at least one of them as an outlet for their fury. In your dreams, Lu Yuanqing sneered. He was also an elite that ranked in the top 10 of the academy. They wanted to detain him? Is that right? Ling Han moved while wielding his sword. In a flash, his figure had already appeared in front of Lu Yuanqing. His right hand balled into a fist, and he shot a punch at Lu Yuanqing. How dare you! Wu moved as well, pressing out with his right hand. It turned into a massive mountain, wanting to stop Ling Han. Ling Han had long since been waiting for him. With a wave of his right hand, the divine demon sword swept out in a strike. Shua, that massive mountain formed of regulations, was immediately slashed in two. In mere terms of destructive power, what could compare to the divine demon sword? Sun Feng, too, roared in fury and drew a bow. Though it was very old and damaged, it exuded a chilling aura. Xiao, he drew the bow and shot out an arrow, but Mutal moved decisively, focusing his full power into a shield that blocked this arrow. It was not able to affect Ling Han. You have gone too far. Lu Yuanqing roared in fury. You faced Wu Yo on one side, and at the same time planned to take me down as well? Just how much are you looking down on me? It was not that he had not exchanged blows with Ling Han before. The battle prowess of both sides was almost on par. He countered strongly, wanting to make Ling Han know just how powerful he could be. Ling Han used Fists of Fury and launched a barrage of attacks at Lu Yuanqing. What was Fists of Fury? Naturally, it was referring to strikes of fury, something related to emotion. If Ling Han was under normal circumstances, he would only be able to release about 70 to 80% of the true might of Fists of Fury. But now someone had an eye on his woman and had come right to his doorstep to issue threats, so how could he not feel angry? Boom! Using Fists of Fury, it was as if Ling Han had turned into a great demon from the primitive age. Every punch carried supreme dominance. He was also like a crazed demon, and others would feel their hearts shudder and their legs go unsteady just at the sight of him. Lu Yuanqing was instantly suppressed. This time, Ling Han used his true strength. Multiple regulations surged out with astonishing might. Both Wu Ye and Sun Feng roared in fury and wanted to rush forwards to save him. However, one of them was being detained by Mutal, while the other was intimidated by the powerful weapon in Ling Han's hands and did not dare to come closer at all. He could only watch helplessly as Lu Yuanqing was beaten down harder and harder. In merely a few hundred moves, Lu Yuanqing was subdued, and Ling Han held him up like he was holding a chick. Everyone was stunned. Though everyone knew that a monarch star was stronger than a monarch tier, there was still a major tier between the two of them, after all. No matter what, the two of them should have had an equal share of the limelight. How could they have known that Ling Han's evolution index had reached 10, 9, whereas ordinary monarch stars were at 10? This meant that he was close to leaping out of the threshold of monarch stars. How could he not be strong? Both Wu Ye and Sun Feng stopped. Now that Lu Yuanxin had fallen into Ling Han's hands, there was no meaning for them to continue fighting. They both had ugly expressions. Though they themselves were completely fine, the three of them had entered the demon quarters together, and only two of them left in the end. If this spread out, it would naturally be a great humiliation. And all this was because of Ling Han. As expected of a monarch star, he was really too terrifying. If he was to break through to 8th Lotus, he would definitely be qualified to become a threat to Yu Yuan. Let's go! Neither Wu Ye nor Sun Feng stayed and continued to fight zealously. Now that things had reached this point, they might as well leave resolutely and decisively to prevent further humiliation. Chapter 23:11 Great Misfortune. Chapter 23:11 Great Misfortune. The moment Wu Ye and Sun Feng left, the demon quarters exploded with thunderous cheers. They had actually chased off 2 of the elites ranked in the top 10 of the academy. Furthermore, they had been forced to leave behind one of their companions. This combat achievement was extremely shocking. Everyone's eyes were focused on Ling Han. It was he, armed with a single sword, that had won back the pride of the demon quarters and had raised their reputation to a new height at that. Bah! 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 Everyone shouted hoarsely, as if they wanted to shout out their hearts, and only then could they express the excitement that was presently in their hearts. As for Mutil, they had ignored him completely. What they needed now was a hero. Ling Han smirked faintly and tossed Lu Yuanxin over. Pah! This guy instantly fell onto the ground. Come, if you have a grudge with him, get your revenge. Ling Han was very devious. He grabbed the member of the demon race that had consecutively been struck with 12 swords and forced to expose his bottom in the aftermath. This guy had long since passed out cold. Ling Han stretched out a hand and pressed down. Regulations of wood surged out, and the 12 golden swords that were still stabbed into his body immediately disappeared. Furthermore, his injuries were also recovering at a visible rate. He slowly regained consciousness. When he saw his fellow companions around him, his heart calmed. However, he immediately felt coolness on a specific spot on his body. Instantly, his expression changed drastically. He secretly stretched out his hand and touched it. When his hand came into contact with bare skin, his face was immediately ashen. Oh no, he had actually exposed his bottom in full public. Now, he really had no face to show himself. Ling Han laughed, patted his shoulder, and said, I'll tell you some good news. Your A*S is still completely untouched and fine. That demon's expression was resentful. If it were not Ling Han that had repeatedly used him as a scapegoat, why would he have been struck so many times and passed out in his pain? If he had not passed out, how could he have possibly exposed his bottom? The others laughed raucously. In the first place, there was countless internal strife among the demon race, so they would naturally be unconcerned about this person's pride. They revered elites, and Ling Han was the hero in their hearts. Come, we won't leave any overnight grudges. Ling Han helped him up, and then pointed at Lu Yuanxin, who was lying on the ground. Ling Han had long since knocked him out. The demon instantly seethed in fury. He was definitely no idiot. When he saw that only one of the angel race, Lu Yuanxin, was left here, he could more or less guess what had happened. Hence, if he was to vent his fury and resentment on Lu Yuanxin, he would never dare to actually do so. But how could he not avenge this grudge? He had been forced to expose his bottom in public. Moreover, if he could stomp a few times on one of the top 10 elites of the academy, Lu Yuanxin, what kind of great honor would that be? It was enough to make up for the humiliation he had suffered by exposing his bottom. In any case, the angel and demon race had never been on good terms. Even if he really caused any great trouble, wouldn't there still be someone stronger than him to hold down the fort? His malicious intent stoked his courage. Immediately, he raised his foot and stomped on Lu Yuanxin's face. Ling Han smiled inwardly. With a thought, the power of regulation that had locked Lu Yuanxin instantly subsided like seawater. Lu Yuanxin immediately came back to his senses. At first, he was still dazed, but when he opened his eyes, he then saw a massive bull's hoof stomping down on his face. Instinctively, he shouted lightly as he shot up in a leap while sending out a harsh attack. Peng, that unfortunate demon, was instantly sent flying. If it were not Ling Han stretching out his hand to block some of the impact, he would probably have been killed. It was not because Ling Han had suddenly become kind, but rather that the matter would become serious if someone died, and if the Academy pursued the matter, it would be hard for him to come out clean as well. Fuck! That demon released a roar of indignant fury, looking plaintively at Lu Yuanxin. Then he very decisively closed his eyes, and he had once again passed out. Everyone was speechless. To be unfortunate to this extent, this guy was probably setting a record. Meanwhile, Ling Han pretended to be furious. You actually dare to cause further injury. Brothers, beat him up! Beat him up! All the members of the demon race were also furious. They all rushed forwards, pouring out punches and kicks all on Lu Yuanxin. Though Ling Han had dispelled the control over Lu Yuanxin, he had still left behind a power of suppression so that the other could only release a 10,000th of his original battle prowess, and this had dragged his battle prowess to the level of 7th Lotus. Just how many 7th Lotus demons were there here? Furthermore, there was no lack of monarch tiers and emperor tiers among them, with every single person sending out a strike, even if Lu Yuanxin was a monarch tier. So what? He was still beaten to the point of wailing in pain. The more he called out, the more excited the masses became. 1. Because Yu Yuan had emerged from the angel quarters. This also led to the angel quarters taking the lion's share of resources among the 4 quarters. Usually, no matter how arrogant the members of the angel quarters were. So what? Who would dare make enemies of them? Just like how Sun Feng and his group had actually barged into the demon quarters this time. If it were not for Ling Han showing his might, they would still have been able to retreat completely unscathed. This was the intimidation of Yu Yuan, and now with Ling Han leading them, it had completely drummed up the military morale of the demon race. Perhaps everyone had suppressed their fury for too long, which resulted in this great explosion, and Lu Yuanxin had thus become their punching bag. Peng, peng, peng. All of them were extremely violent, almost beating Lu Yuanxin to death. In just a short while, Lu Yuanxin had been beaten to practically his last breath. If it were not for Mutal holding them back firmly, he could have even been beaten to death. Ling Han chuckled and quietly left, hiding his name and credit. However, this matter had also caused a great commotion. Who would have thought that the demon quarters would actually explode and dare to capture a resident of the angel quarters and beat him up? Furthermore, there was actually an extremely furious member of the demon quarters that had a *S-raped Lu Yuanxin with a metal rod. It was unknown whether this was fact or fiction, but after Lu Yuanxin was sent back, he kept holding his behind every time he walked for the next few days. So many people believed that this was true. And the man that had caused the demon quarters to explode was a miracle. When he first entered the academy, he was only a 6th Lotus 5th leaf. There was a clear assessment record for this, and in just over 100 years he had reached the height of 7th Lotus 9th leaf. This was too shocking. This man's name was Ba, a very flashy name, which was also a mockery of the masses at the same time, who knew how many people had fallen for it and had gained another father suddenly out of nowhere. Meanwhile, Lu Yuanxin had become a laughingstock. As one of the 10 greatest elites of the academy, he had actually been beaten black and blue, and even been a *S-raped. In the future, he would definitely be unable to face others. However, was the angel quarters so easily trifled with? They did not just have Yu Yuan. As expected, just 2 days later, the angel quarters had announced that Ling Han was to immediately kneel with every step of the journey to the angel quarters to make a personal apology. Otherwise, Yu Yuan would move personally, grab Ling Han out of the demon quarters, and publicly punish him. Ling Han did not know this at all. He called Wally over and asked this guy to help him analyze and calculate to find every little problem in his Tao foundation, and then he was to make corrections. After this was done, he went to break through to the immortal palace tier. Why was Wally suddenly willing to help? Of course, it was not because he had suddenly grown a conscience, but rather because Ling Han had issued him a debt note in exchange for this. And why would Wally agree? Ling Han said that he would give Wally divine metal as pay, but it was not now. Instead, it would be owed first because he only had some divine metal in his possession. Moreover, Wally was still earnestly refining that scroll that could not be opened. In any case, he couldn't do anything else in the next 200 million years either, so what was wrong with just owing him for now? In short, Ling Han spoke very glibly, convincing Wally into agreeing to help first, and then ask for payment later. Chapter 23:12 Origin. Chapter 23:12 Origin. Wally might not be a martial arts elite, but in terms of mathematical skill, there was probably no one that could compare to him. According to Wally, any regulations could be enacted, expressed, and understood through various matrices. He also mentioned things like formulas, mathematical equations, and others, and had written who knew how many pages. Ling Han was completely mystified. Speak in a way I can understand. Ling Han really could not take it anymore. Your knowledge of regulations and the essence of the high-level dimension is too backwards. Wally shook his head. High-level dimensions have already developed a systematic understanding of the essence of origin realms, and the formula I demonstrated to you is the key to unlocking this essence. The reason why I was designed and created was to explore the essence of the origin realm. Hence, after I was created, my realm has paid an innumerable price to send me to a high-level dimension and absorb the knowledge there. Wally revealed an astonishing truth. Ling Han was stunned. You guys actually have the ability to send people of your realm to a higher-level dimension. It should be known that if Ling Han had not obtained the origin magic cube, there would have been absolutely no way that he could enter into the foreign realm. That was because he could not have cultivated the regulations of the foreign realm without it. The moment he had entered that way, he would have been targeted by the heaven and earth, and once the regulations locked in his body had been completely exhausted, his strength would only have been limited to the Genesis tier. That would have only spelled death for him. The Dark Inverse Realm was also a low-level dimension, yet they actually had the ability to send someone into a high-level dimension. How could this not be shocking? Only me. Wally pointed at himself. I am an artificial intelligence model, though I have retained my battle module. It is not my primary function. I have not cultivated your so-called regulations. Theoretically speaking, I am no different than a piece of metal or wood. Hence, even if I entered into a high-level dimension, I would not be detected. He couldn't have imagined that this guy also had the potential to be a spy. After I learned enough knowledge in the high-level dimension, I returned to my realm as instructed. Through a long period of calculation and deduction, I absorbed all the theoretical knowledge of the high-level dimension, and next was entering into the practical experimentation stage. The power of heaven and earth is superior to regulations. In high-level dimensions, elites would be directly extracting the power of heaven and earth, but ordinary people cannot do so, and it needs to be mined. Furthermore, the power of heaven and earth is located in the core of the realm, so it is extremely difficult to mine. Moreover, if it was done rashly without mature experience and technique, it would bring great disaster to my realm. Hence, a powerful king and I arrived here, preparing to execute a top-secret mission. When he spoke of this, he couldn't help but stop abruptly. That was because damage had appeared in this part of his memory, and he could not continue further. Wally's manner was incredibly meticulous. He had to calculate and deduce, and only after it had exceeded a certain percentage would he think that an action was viable or close to the truth. And the ability of making associative connections was pitifully poor for him. Perhaps it was just like he had said. It had not been very long since he had developed self-consciousness. After a few more epochs, he might be able to make an associative connection, but all this would still have to be based on ironclad facts. Ling Han very easily thought of it. What Wally and that king wanted to do was to enter into the realm core of the foreign realm and extract the power of heaven and earth there. If they had succeeded, they could have returned to the Dark Inverse realm and continued. In that case, the Dark Inverse realm might have been able to successfully leap to possess the battle prowess of a medium-level dimension. Worst come to worst, they would still have been able to become one of the strongest low-level dimensions. If they had failed, the damage caused would only have been done to the foreign realm and would not have affected the Dark Inverse realm. This was Ling Han's deduction, and was practically based completely on assumptions as well. Furthermore, he thought that he was practically 100% correct. However, there was absolutely no way that Wally would agree with him. Can you extract the power of heaven and earth? Ling Han thought of this and couldn't help but inhale sharply. Right. Wally had mentioned some void particle energy and said it was one of the source powers of an origin realm. If he had not gone to a high-level dimension, how could he have had this kind of knowledge? Wally nodded. Yes, this is a very complicated process of energy conversion, he explained endlessly. This would not endanger his existence, and Ling Han was owing him payment, so he held nothing back. With a thought, Ling Han took out the origin magic cube and asked, "Do you know what this is?" Wally's eyes lit up, and his figure began to flicker. Ling Han knew that this was an expression of excitement from him. This is the core born when the heaven and earth first developed, and contains the power of origin, he said. What is origin? Ling Han asked. When the heaven and earth first began, various source powers would develop extremely intensely and become more and more complex, so you would not be able to easily penetrate directly into the essence, Wally explained. Just like a grain of rice hiding in a granary, you would not be able to find it at all. If the layers of energy wrapped around it could be decoded, our formula would become simpler, and the model would become more well-developed. We would be able to better grasp the power of heaven and earth. No, according to my calculations, this would be qualitative progress. But when a realm comes into being, there will be strong power protecting it, and there is no way to obtain its core at all. Wally's eyes were glowing, and the light in his eyes was not dimming at all. Give this core to me, and there is a chance that I can decipher the secret of the essence of heaven and earth. Ling Han only thought that the Dark Inverse realm was really awesome that they could actually create such a terrifying thing. Hold on, at least 35 epochs had passed since Wally was born. How could it be that the Dark Inverse realm could not create a second Wally? They can't. Wally's sensitivity to the slight changes in expression and flicker in emotion of others was practically on the level of a monster. He immediately sensed what Ling Han was thinking. In the first place, I was created through all efforts and resources of our realm. Going by my deduction, our realm would need at least 300 epochs to be able to produce enough materials to create a second me. He thought for a while. Of course, this would not be the same Mayam unique. Ling Han wanted to laugh. At times, this guy was frighteningly meticulous in thinking, but at others he would be like a child. It was indeed, as Wally had said, it had not been long since he had developed self-consciousness, and was presently still in the process of maturing. Ling Han shook his head and said, "I can't give this to you for now. I need it too." Wally's eyes shone brightly, and stared at the origin magic cube for a long time. Then he said, "This is the core of a false realm. The power of origin contained within is very, very limited. Furthermore, this power is presently dissipating and evolving, becoming more complicated. It will become more and more similar with the matured power of heaven and earth. Then it will be completely worthless," he finally concluded. Was this guy bluffing to scare him? Ling Han thought. However, Wally had never had any previous history of lying so far, and it seemed like he had not learned this skill. either. Ling Han pondered for a while, and then asked how much longer. About 200 million years, Wally estimated. Without further analysis, I can only come up with such a vague number. Ling Han was immediately relieved. The origin magic cube would only lose effect in another 200 million years. There was still a lot of time. He patted a hand on Wally's shoulder and said, "Don't worry. I will give this to you before it loses its value." Wally nodded. The sooner, the better. Otherwise, the power of origin would only become more and more complex and encrypt itself heavily. The difficulty level for my decoding would also become higher and higher. Chapter 23, 13 Switched. Chapter 23, 13 Switched. It was not that Ling Han did not trust Wally. This guy believed in equal exchange, and definitely could be trusted. However, if he took the origin magic cube, it would be like the scroll as well, just stuffing it somewhere into his robes and slowly refining it. Going by his words, this was an analysis of some kind of energy composition and a decoding of its formula and module. Then he would be able to extract the power of heaven and earth himself to fuse it. Ling Han understood it, but had absolutely no concept about it. What formula and module? So what if he knew it? The formula and module can be considered the equivalent of your cultivation technique, Wally explained. However, the cultivation technique teaches you how to use the regulations, while the formula and module are decrypting the power of heaven and earth so that you can channel the source power of a Genesis world. Do you understand now? No. Ling Han shook his head. Then I will explain it to you again. Wally was astonishingly patient. Because he had accepted Ling Han's debtor's note, he thought that he had the duty to guide Ling Han. Ling Han was getting a headache. What I want you to do is to calculate the deficiencies I have had in my path of cultivation and not try and impress me. He knew that this magic soup should be a key to helping him walk towards a path of greater strength, but he really could not understand at present. Hence, he chose the more direct route, and that was to increase his battle prowess first before all else. When he had reached a certain level, he would naturally be able to understand. Wally nodded and continued to analyze the detailed problems about his cultivation for Ling Han. He had entered into a high-level dimension and had already leaped from the regulations themselves to the power of heaven and earth in his understanding of power. From a certain aspect, he was a heavenly venerate, and a heavenly venerate of a high-level dimension at that. This was extremely helpful for Ling Han. He was practically recultivating with the regulations of a high-level dimension. Your evolution index has actually improved slightly in such a short period of time. Wally appeared disbelieving. You are extraordinary. I know. Ling Han was utterly shameless and directly accepted this compliment. If it was the Empress bewitching Maiden Row and the others, they would probably laugh at Ling Han for being shameless. But Wally was merely telling the truth as it was. His expression was unchanging and the tone completely serious. Wally was definitely a responsible teacher. He pointed out the problems to Ling Han one after another detailedly with incredible patience. Even if Ling Han asked 7 or 8 times consecutively because he did not fully understand problem, Wally's emotions would not change in the slightest. A chill suddenly rose up in Ling Han. If Wally decided to become a great villain, with his terrifying ability of calculation and estimation, added with his calmness and patience, just what kind of frightening consequences could it cause? No wonder they had needed several hundred epochs just to produce one of him. If he could be mass-produced, that would be a calamity to all the other realms. Time passed swiftly. It had long since passed the time that Yu Yuan had determined. But the residents of the angel quarters seemed to have completely forgotten this matter. No one actually jumped out to make any complaints. Only later was it discovered that Yu Yuan had also gone to where Ling Han and the others had previously gone. He had probably been trapped there and could not come out for the moment, and that was why he had not had the time to cause trouble for Ling Han. Originally, Ling Han had not been concerned. He had been cultivating inside the Black Tower all this while, and would occasionally ask Wally for advice. Just a year later, he had broken through to the immortal palace tier. He had modified the pill recipe for the 1,000-year dream pill so that the medicinal ingredients of the foreign realm could also be used. He became incredibly low-key. A few decades later, the Empress and Hunyo both reached dividing 9 souls, and bewitching Maiden Row was the first to advance into the immortal palace tier. That was because she had originally been in this cultivation level, so her speed was naturally high. Another 100 years passed, and Ling Han had finally reached the second secret again. It seemed like more than 10,000 years had been wasted. Walking a large circle, his cultivation level was still the same as when he had fled from the celestial realm. However, if he were to return to the celestial realm, his battle prowess would be multiplied by 10-fold at least. If it is now in a battle of equals, Ji Wuming should no longer be my match. Ling Han suddenly felt a profound despondency. Having a strong rival that he could contend with, or even someone stronger than himself, so that he could chase after him was actually a kind of motivation. However, Ji Wuming is a reincarnated ninth heaven celestial king. In the past, he was practically an invincible existence, reincarnating and cultivating again from the beginning. He should not be so simple, either. I still have several tens of billions of years before I can return to the celestial realm. Who knows, maybe he will have already become a heavenly venerate by then. I really want to spar with him. The high-speed spiking period of his cultivation level was over because his cultivation level finally completely corresponded to his actual cultivation level. There was no way he could just depend on comprehension of regulations to directly increase his cultivation level, but rather had to do so both physically and spiritually. This could not be rushed. Without genuine natural treasures, he might only be able to advance to the next minor level every 100 million years. Because he also needed physical cultivation, he frequently used the time cultivation chamber of the Academy. The highest rate of time acceleration was 1000x, and the Academy was wide open for a monarch star like him, with no conditions attached. Several more years later, news spread out. Yu Yuan had finally come out of that realm, and the next 1000 Academy tournament was also about to begin. The Academy would be holding selections for elites that would participate in this major event. Yu Yuan would definitely be going, and there was only 10 for the total number, which meant that there were only 9 positions that could be contended for. Is Yu Yuan finally about to return? Ling Han smiled faintly. He had long since wanted to have a battle with this monarch star. The latter actually dared to have thoughts about the Empress. Just see how Ling Han would deal with him. The Academy decided that a contest to select the 9 representatives would be held 3 days later. For Ling Han. The good news was that the Empress and Hunyo had also returned to the immortal palace tier, and had even surpassed him once more in cultivation level, reaching the height of 5th secret. In other words, everyone's cultivation level had finally returned to their starting line. 3 days passed and selections began. Because those that had reached the immortal palace tier or 8th lotus were naturally considered seeded candidates and had no need to join the preliminary selections, Ling Han, the Empress, Hunyo, and bewitching Maiden Row had all automatically advanced to the next round. In truth, aside from monarch stars who could match a mortal palace tier when they themselves were only dividing soul tier. Thus, as long as the number of immortal palace tiers exceeded 9, the others would naturally have no interest in participating. In the final rounds, aside from Ling Han and his group, it was Sun Feng and Wu Ye from the angel quarters, Mutal, Anju, and Magyafai from the demon quarters. A yellow bull and a snow leopard represented the holy beasts, and the insect race sent a giant bee. As for Lu Yuanxin, because he could not bring himself to face the public, it was natural that he could not participate. There were a total of 12 people, and only 3 would be eliminated. Every single person had to fight 11 matches. The 3 people who had won the least number of matches would be eliminated, while the others would enter the final name list of participation. The battles began. Because they were all monarch tiers, aside from Ling Han, The battle prowess of those at equal cultivation levels was practically the same. Thus, the cultivation level had become especially important. After 2 days of battles, the snow leopard, the bee, and muttle were eliminated, while the others successfully advanced. However, only a single day later, the Academy suddenly released an announcement, announcing that Ling Han's place was removed and Lu Yuanxin would be going in his stead. When this news was out, the masses immediately erupted in an uproar. How could that be allowed? If the Academy would be appointing who would be participating, then what need was there for the selection battles? Very soon, some well-informed sources revealed the truth. As it turned out, Yu Yuan had exerted pressure on the Academy, saying that if Ling Han was not withdrawn, he would not be participating in the 1000 Academy tournament this time. Though Ling Han was also a monarch star and had boundless future prospects, and would definitely become a brilliant star of the Academy as well, how could he possibly be as important as Yu Yuan now? Thus he had been switched. Chapter 23:14 Barging into the Angel Quarters. Chapter 23:14 Barging into the Angel Quarters. When Ling Han heard about this, he was naturally extremely displeased. He had absolutely no intentions to battle for the foreign realm, but if he could get a high ranking while participating in the 1000 Academies tournament, the Academy would also offer astonishing rewards. What he was displeased about was this. Furthermore, Yu Yuan coveted his woman, and now had come around to cause him trouble. This was also what Ling Han could not accept. "We will withdraw as well," the Empress said. "That's right. That damn monkey. Niu is going to beat him until he bursts." Hu Niu was also aggressive. Ling Han pondered and said, "Previously, the angel race has barged in. This time it should be our turn." Sure. Hu Niu immediately clapped her hands. She was a little demon king that delighted in having the world in chaos in the first place, so she naturally supported Ling Han's plan to commit a massacre. However, this could possibly deepen the conflict between the angel race and demon race, bewitching Maiden Rose said. Ling Han shrugged. If they want to fight, they can just go ahead. What does it have to do with us? Now that bewitching Maiden Rose thought about it, he was right. She had been disguising herself as one of the angel race for too long, and unknowingly had placed herself in their shoes. Then let's charge over. The 4 of them left the demon quarters and went all the way to the angel quarters. Actually, whether it was the demon quarters, the angel quarters, the insect quarters, or the holy beast quarters, they did not have any walls or gates. It was just that the 4 of them were located in the 4 corners of the Academy, respectively, with a very great distance separating each from the other. Hence, the 4 of them entering into the angel quarters was very easily done. It was only when the masses discovered Ling Han, who was a member of the demon quarters, that a commotion began. A member of the demon quarters had actually barged into the angel quarters. This was a provocation. Instantly, multiple angels walked out. A great many who had gotten the news also appeared, all of them standing on the streets and staring at Ling Han coldly. No one dared to make a move. Who did not know that Ling Han was an 8th Lotus-level monarch star? Furthermore, the angel quarters only had a total of 3 8th Lotus monarch tiers. If they did not move, who would be able to stop Ling Han? Right? They forgot to count the Empress and the others in. But judging by the intimate manner in which they walked side by side with Ling Han, who could hope that they would turn around to deal with Ling Han? Bah! Lu Yuanxin was the first to jump out. After he was humiliated by Lu Yuanxin, there were a great many years he had not dared to step out of his doors. However, he was a monarch tier, after all, and had been earnestly cultivating all this while. Added with how his clan was also pouring all their efforts into nurturing him, his cultivation level improved extremely quickly. At present, he was an 8th Lotus third leaf. He wanted revenge. 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 Ling Han couldn't help but grin and replied, "Good son, long time no see." Lu Yuanxin exploded with fury. He was really too furious, so he actually forgot that there was a trap hidden in Ling Han's name. In the end, he screwed himself over again. I'm going to kill you." He moved furiously. Xiao, his figure leaped out and charged towards Ling Han. Scram! The Empress's eyes widened, and a frightening aura surged out. Her delicate hand shot out and turned into a great mountain that blasted towards Lu Yuanxin. Pum! Lu Yuanxin was instantly sent flying so hard like a cannonball that there was no further sight of him. It should be known that not only was the Empress presently a fifth secret monarch star, but had also merged the regulations of the two realms, so her battle prowess completely surpassed that of any monarch star that was her equal in cultivation level. This naturally was incredibly frightening. A third secret monarch tier? Just a piece of cake for her. The residents of the angel quarters were all dumbfounded. Previously, though the Empress had slightly shown her prowess in battle, she had not displayed her full strength. Who could have imagined that her battle prowess would be so powerful? Furthermore, she was clearly a member of the angel race, so why had she chosen to help one of the demon race? Xing, what is the meaning of this? Wu Ye also appeared. His eyes were set on the Empress. His gaze held adoration, but at the same time was also filled with confusion and wariness. The Empress merely swept a cold look at him, and did not even deign to reply at all. Wu Ye's expression involuntarily became ugly, and he said, "Don't think that just because Yu Yuan likes you, you can simply put on airs in front of me." The Empress raised a slender brow and moved directly. "Xiao!" She arrived in front of Wu Ye in a flash. She sliced out with a palm, and regulations bloomed, dazzling and bright. Pum! Wu Ye moved to parry. With a slight movement, he already blocked the strike from the Empress, and the latter was still sent flying back about 300 meters. One was a fifth secret, while the other was a seventh secret. Even the identity of Monarch Star could not make up for the difference in their cultivation level. After all, Wu Ye was also a monarch tier. However, Wu Ye's expression became even uglier. He had sparred with the Empress before. At that time, the Empress had practically admitted defeat directly, so he had thought that the Empress was just a monarch tier as well. But now that they had traded blows, he found out that the Empress was definitely no monarch tier, but rather a monarch star. Heavens, monarch stars were really too rare. Even in the entire 100 Battles Academy, Yu Yuan was the only one, and it was just this one monarch star that had gained the 72nd place for the 100 Battles Academy in the entire foreign realm. The strength of monarch star was clearly extraordinary, and their rarity was the same as well. Yet now, first, Ling Han had popped up, and now there was another Empress. What was going on here? Even monarch stars could emerge in bursts? The Empress returned and charged back towards Wu Ye. Her wish to defeat Wu Ye was practically an impossible feat, but for Wu Ye to defeat her, he would also need to expend extremely great effort. Humph! Sun Feng appeared. He was stronger than Wu Ye. With his hands crossed behind his back, he emanated an incredible air of confidence. He thought that he could subdue the Empress in 100 moves. After all, he was an 8th Lotus 8th Leaf. However, because Wu Ye was actually enjoying the upper hand, he naturally would not interfere as well. Instead, he set his eyes on Ling Han. "You are quite courageous to actually dare to run over to the angel quarters of your own volition. What is this, a tiger's den?" Ling Han chuckled. "It is innumerable times more frightening than that." Sun Feng moved angrily. At the time, the three of them had barged into the demon quarters, but Lu Yuanxin had been left behind in the end. This had become a laughing matter for the entire angel quarters, sustaining the merciless mockery and ridicule of the insect race and holy beast quarters, and this time, if Ling Han was allowed to withdraw completely unscathed, the pride of the angel quarters would really be lost, and they would never be able to hold their heads high again. "Damn insect, Niu will fight you." Hu Niu leaped out, battling fiercely with Sun Feng. However, there was not much of a gap between her battle prowess and that of the Empress, which was naturally very far from enough to match Sun Feng. The moment they traded blows, she fell into a disadvantage. However, this little girl had already cultivated the greatest eternity immortal physique, and now that her cultivation level had attained that level, this physique was once again unlocked. She continuously dissolved into the flow of time. At one instant, she would be in the past, and at another she would be in the future, and thus could effectively evade Sin Feng's attacks. For the moment, there was definitely no risk that she would be defeated. Everyone was once more stunned at this, their mouths gaping widely. This was another monarch star. Gods, there were actually 4 monarch stars in the 100 Battles Academy. This was practically powerful to a chilling extent. If another 1 million years passed, these 4 would probably reach the height of 11th Leaf, and they would definitely be able to crush the 1,000 Academies tournament by then. Sun Feng was also numb with shock. Why did Yu Yuan have such an incredibly extraordinary high status? That was because he was a monarch star. And now Hunyeo was also a monarch star, which proved that she would also be able to achieve a similar status to Yu Yuan's in the future. Then, now that he was offending her like this, wouldn't it be digging a trap for himself? But now it was impossible for him to stop halfway. He could only grit his teeth and continue. As for how the future would unfold, he did not consider it first. He hoped that Yu Yuan would have a way to resolve this. Ling Han crossed his arms over his chest and laughed. Anyone else wants to stop me? The angel race exchanged looks and no one made a sound. Whoever stepped up would only be asking for their own suffering, right? How truly arrogant! A voice rang out, menacing and icy. Chapter 23:15, suppressed instead. Chapter 23:15, suppressed instead. Yu Yuan. Lord Yu Yuan. Senior brother Yu Yuan. When they heard this senior brother, the members of the angel race all looked excited. He was a young, great monarch. In the future, he would be able to sit loftily above the 9 heavens and look down on all life. In fact, it was even possible that he could surpass the regulations and become a heavenly venerate that looked down on the rest of the world. In everyone's eyes, there was no opponent that Yu Yuan could not deal with. Yu Yuan appeared. He was an indescribably handsome man, his feathered wings, snow white with gold at the edges, and looked incredibly handsome. His hair was golden, each strand looking like it had been woven from gold, and the halo above his head was also golden in color, glowing with divine light such that he looked like a god of war in golden armor. However, his expression was very cool, as if everyone else in the world was only an ant in his eyes. He was completely emotionless. He looked at Ling Han and did not repeat the mistakes that others had made. He asked, "Have you come to beg for mercy?" Ling Han couldn't help but lament, too bad, secretly. This guy actually had not called him father. He smiled faintly and said, "Hee, I saw that today was sunny and had fair weather, so I decided to have a barbecue feast here. You don't mind, right? To have a barbecue here? You haven't eaten meat for 3 lifetimes, right?" A mere member of the demon race actually dared to come into the angel quarters for a picnic. Just how uncaring could you be? However, everyone knew that Ling Han was only purposely saying this. In truth, he had come to crash in on them and cause trouble for them. In truth, Ling Han had done so. In any case, everyone was feeling very displeased. 2 great beauties of their race actually betrayed them to help Ling Han, and they were extremely rare monarch stars at that. Anyone would be throwing up blood at that thought. How had their delicate flowers fallen prey to a pig? Then you are seeking death. Yu Yuan sneered. His expression did not change in the slightest. It was like he did not know how to smile or feel anger. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. Your expression is quite similar to that of someone else I know. You have no idea what smiling is. It can't be that the 2 of you are brothers, right? The person he was talking about was naturally Wally, and if that guy was here, he would definitely list out proof to show just how many differences there were between him and Yu Yuan, and assert that the chances that the 2 of them were brothers was endlessly close to 0. Meanwhile, the residents of the angel quarters were furious. Ling Han actually dared to tease their monarch star, which filled them with indignant fury. Yu Yuan, on the other hand, had no change in expression. He glanced at the Empress and turned his eyes back on Ling Han. "Kneel and beg for mercy, and I can spare you." He had never been a merciful man. When he found out that there was an unknown relationship between Ling Han and the Empress, he had already passed the penalty of death on Ling Han. However, before Ling Han died, he wanted to cut off all thoughts that the Empress had for Ling Han. The simplest method was to have the Empress see Ling Han's ugliness as he knelt and begged humbly. Ling Han naturally knew Yu Yuan's thoughts well. He chuckled. "What meaning is there to waste your breath on such nonsense? Just come on, and let me see the strength of the top elite of the academy." Yu Yuan was disdainful. "A mere 8th lotus second leaf. So what if you are a monarch star? In front of me, you will not even withstand a single strike." He took a step forwards. Immediately, a frightening aura roared out like the great ocean, causing everyone to feel the urge to kneel and worship this young, great monarch. Furthermore, a white lotus flower appeared on his forehead, and it had 8 petals and 10 leaves. Hiss! Yu Yuan was actually an 8th lotus 10th leaf already. He was really just a small step away from the true pinnacle of 8th lotus. And with his freakish genius, he would definitely be able to take that last step successfully. Yu Yuan! All the members of the angel race cheered, shaking the entire academy. They only knew that Yu Yuan was very strong, but no one knew that he had actually attained this kind of height. He was like a great mountain that they could only look up to. The other 3/4 heard the commotion and came over to watch the excitement as well. "What? Ba actually wants to spar with Yu Yuan. Though he is also a monarch star, their cultivation levels are too far apart. There is no way that he could be his match. Being able to parry 2 to 3 strikes should be his limit, right? 2 to 3 strikes? Think about it. There is a total of 8 minor levels separating the two of them. It will be an insta-kill. I can bet anything with you on this gamble. It will definitely be an insta-kill. And this is an undoubtable matter. 1 strike, and there definitely cannot be any more than that. If it was Xing or Niu, they may be able to parry a few more strikes. They are 5th leaf monarch stars after all. Gods, our academy actually has 4 monarch stars. It should be known that even the top Tiger Roar Academy has just 2. We will definitely become the strongest academy in the future. Everyone chattered excitedly. They naturally did not have much optimism about Ling Han, and instead thought that the Empress and Hunyo were stronger. And it was amidst the sounds of this discussion that Ling Han drew the divine demon sword. He was no idiot. With a gap of 8 minor levels, he would actually challenge another monarch star. He naturally had something to depend on, and it was the divine demon sword. "Come on." Ling Han's right hand held the sword while he beckoned Yu Yuan over with his left hand, his expression extremely disdainful. Yu Yuan's eyes blinked slightly. This was an omen that he was feeling killing intent. "If you won't make your move, fine, I'll do it." Ling Han released a battle cry and charged out first, with him waving the divine demon sword in a slash. A flash of sword chi swept out in 4 strikes. There was no need to even make contact. Merely the sight of them would cause a stabbing pain in your eyes. This was divine metal, the toughest metal in the entire world, and could also be forged into the sharpest weapon. Even if it had not been upgraded to the height of celestial tool, it still possessed extremely great might. Yu Yuan frowned, and he actually did not dare to face it head-on as he bounced away. It could not be helped. The divine demon sword was too sharp, and he was still at the level of the immortal Palantir. There was no way he could use superior power to deliver a strike from a distance that would cause the divine demon sword to slip from Ling Han's hand. Gasp! Everyone exclaimed in shock. At first, they had thought that Ling Han would be insta-killed by Yu Yuan, but now, not only had he not been insta-killed, he had even forced Yu Yuan into evasion. This was completely beyond expectations. Just relying on the might of your treasured tool. Humph! Nothing out of the ordinary. Yu Yuan was not just evading. As his hands flipped and danced, Multiple harsh flashes of sword light were also sweeping towards Ling Han. Ling Han laughed and disdainfully retorted, "It is just that your cultivation level is slightly higher than mine. If it was a battle of equal cultivation levels, without using any strong weapon, I would definitely defeat you in 100 moves. Arrogance." Yu Yuan humped coldly, not even deigning to refute. He had long since become an invincible monarch star. There was no need for him to defeat Ling Han in a battle of equals to prove his own strength. "Then you can just continue running like this." Ling Han brandished the divine demon sword. Any attack that rushed towards him would be sliced in half. Furthermore, his stamina had long since reached the level of the ascending origin tier, so the speed of his attacks was astonishingly fast. There was absolutely no need for him to worry that Yu Yuan's attacks would be too close together and he would miss out on one or two of them. In this exchange, over 100 blows were traded. Indeed, Yu Yuan could only sustain blows from Ling Han. It was not that his strength was inferior to Ling Han's, but rather that the sword in Ling Han's hands was too powerful. For an immortal palace tier to possess a celestial tool, what kind of concept was that? Everyone was rendered mute. Even if everyone knew that this was not because Yu Yuan's strength was outmatched, they still felt their scalps go numb. When had they seen Yu Yuan fall into a disadvantage in a battle of equals? What more when Ling Han's cultivation level was far inferior to his? "Fine, I will suppress my cultivation level to battle with you." Yu Yuan roared in fury. He was about to die of sullenness. Chapter 23:16 Battle of Equals. Chapter 23:16 Battle of Equals. Yu Yuan was the top elite of the academy. Even among all the 8th lotuses of the entire foreign realm, Yu Yuan was also a top-tier existence. Yet now he was actually driven into a tizzy by a mere second lotus, which made him feel both sullen and furious. It was not that he had no weapon he could not draw. However, before it could even touch the divine demon sword, it would be broken in half with just a sweep of sword chi. Having a demon charge all the way into the angel quarters, with himself being suppressed, if he did not defeat Ling Han, what face would he have left as the top elite of the academy? Hence, he would rather choose a battle of equal levels. He was confident that his strength was still sufficient for defeating Ling Han. Ling Han slanted a disdainful look at him, yet still withdrew the divine demon sword. "No longer acting the coward?" he asked with a laugh, his mockery evident. Yu Yuan's breath quickened. There had never been anyone that dared to act arrogant in front of him. Anyone who dared do so had all been killed by him. But the problem now was that he really had no possibility of killing Ling Han. This naturally made him feel incredibly uncomfortable. "Disaster comes from a reckless tongue," he threatened menacingly. Ling Han chuckled. "Your eyes have gone blind if you dare to covet even my woman. Moreover, you even played dirty tricks on me. If I don't beat you into a pig's head, I will not be able to vent this anger. Your woman." Yu Yuan couldn't help but rage. The first time he set eyes on the Empress, he was already deeply captivated. What an exquisite beauty, with such majestic bearing, so noble, so proud. Only this kind of woman was worthy of him. If that had not been the case, he would not have targeted Ling Han deliberately. How could Ling Han be worthy? "You are seeking death," he roared, the lotus flower on his forehead trembling. One after another, the leaves disappeared. He was forcefully suppressing his cultivation level. Otherwise, once Ling Han drew the divine demon sword again, he would still only be able to run and hide. Of course, even if he suppressed his cultivation level, it was possible that Ling Han would still draw the divine demon sword again. This would depend on Ling Han's trustworthiness. Finally, he became 8th Lotus Second Leaf, completely equal to Ling Han's present cultivation level. He took a deep breath and stretched out his right hand. Wang, wang, wang. Multiple seals lit up on his arm, and the halo above his head blazed like a sun. His wings flapped, and his whole figure was lifted into the air, as if a war god had descended from the heavens. Countless women of the angel race were completely enraptured with this scene as their hearts all beat faster. They wanted nothing more than to throw themselves into the arms of this mighty, handsome man. In comparison, Ling Han, as a member of the demon race, was really too ugly, covered completely with red skin and bearing distorted features. Only celestial maiden Yunha was an exception. Her mind was filled with Ling Han's heroic image inside the mystery realm. Even if her memory was missing a few crucial scenes, her heart was still moved. However, this was the angel quarters, and she could not cheer Ling Han on in broad daylight and full public. Ling Han scoffed and swept a glance at him. "Birdman, I will beat you down onto the ground in 100 moves at most." "How dare you?" Yu Yuan roared in fury. With a flap of his wings, he shot forwards and charged over to Ling Han. The halo above his head suddenly exploded with light that was off the charts. Even the spectators in the surroundings found their vision completely overtaken by golden light and could not see anything else at all. This was the full power blow of an 8th Lotus second leaf monarch star. It was natural that not many below 8th Lotus could see clearly. Only those 3 8th Lotus monarch tears could see that Yu Yuan turned into a streak of light, sending a punch right at Ling Han. Ling Han cracked a grin and suddenly delivered punch. Boom! When this punch was shot out, the air was instantly compressed. Pung, pung, pung. Endless creases were formed. The scene was really bizarre. Space could actually be creased. With how powerful his stamina was, it had long since advanced into ascending origin tier. Thus, even when he attacked later, it was his attack that reached first, and directly shot right in front of Yu Yuan. Yu Yuan was stunned and concentrated his spiritual power without a second thought. A giant hand of light was formed in front of his face, meeting the punch that Ling Han delivered. How could it be so fast? He roared inwardly. This kind of attack speed was completely illogical. Pung! Ling Han's fist crashed into the giant hand of light, and with a boom, this large hand of light immediately shattered, and the fist penetrated it deeply, continuing to blast towards Yu Yuan's face. What? Seeing this scene, Wu Ye, Sun Feng, and Lu Yuanxin were all exclaiming soundlessly. Their cultivation levels were similar, and they were both monarch stars, so their strength should be extremely close. No, Yu Yuan's cultivation level might have been repressed to second leaf, but it was definitely the peak stage of the second leaf, and it was possible that Ling Han had not reached the peak stage. Perhaps he was only in the late stage, middle stage, or even early stage. In other words, the chance that Yu Yuan had an advantage in cultivation level was still very high, though this advantage might be very small. Yet Ling Han had practically managed to suppress Yu Yuan with a single punch. How could this be? If it had been someone else, they would probably have had to suffer this loss helplessly. But Yu Yuan was a monarch star. Countless divine swords of light actually surged out from his body and swept towards Ling Han's fist. This was an amazing move. Not only could it resolve his own crisis, it could also cause a severe injury to Ling Han, who asked the latter to actually dare to penetrate deeply with just a single fist. A battle at close quarters was a great taboo among cultivators, unless one had an absolute advantage in strength. Ling Han laughed. Lightning wrapped around his fist, and he had absolutely no intention to withdraw his fist. Pung! His fist landed on Yu Yuan's face, and shio! Countless swords of light also landed on his fist and arm at the same time. Yu Yuan was sent back several dozen meters, the halo above his head dimming, which also allowed the masses to recover their sight. What? When they could see clearly, everyone was gaping and felt a chill run down their spines. Disbelief was written all over their faces. There was actually a trace of blood at the corners of Yu Yuan's lips. Hiss! Yu Yuan had actually been injured. How could they believe this? He was the top elite of the academy and had led the academy to win the first place of the 1000 Academy tournament 1 million years ago. Yet now he had actually been injured with a single blow, and it was a strike to the face at that. Who would believe this if they heard it? However, the young prodigies of all four quarters were here, and they all witnessed it with their own eyes. Was this really not an illusion that Ling Han had created? You deserve death! Yu Yuan roared to the heavens. Though his counterattack had all landed on Ling Han's arm, it had not caused any harm. Ling Han's physique was incredibly strong. When he spoke these three words, even his voice was trembling. That was because Ling Han had used the regulations of lightning in this punch, electrocuting him to numbness, so his voice was naturally stuttering when he spoke. Ling Han only flicked his hand in response and said, "What a hard-skinned face. My hand is slightly aching from the impact." Everyone was speechless. You struck his face with your fist, and you actually said that his face was too hard, so your hand hurts now. Wasn't that simply mockery? Yu Yuan's expression became solemn. He had already forcefully suppressed his fury. He looked coldly, and with a shake of his hands, a blade of light appeared in his hold. This was not an actual weapon, but a blade he had manifested through spiritual power and regulations. I did not expect that you have actually cultivated the regulations of lightning. The regulations of lightning had frightening, destructive power. Even now, there was still a fizzling in his body, and his blood was filled with violent factors, affecting the flow of his spiritual power. He adjusted his attitude completely. In this academy, there really was someone that could threaten his soul dominance. However, the regulations of light are not the only regulations I cultivate. He exuded a terrifying killing intent. It was as if his whole person had turned into an executioner's blade, capable of destroying the whole world. Chapter 23:17 Roasted Wing. Chapter 23:17 Roasted Wing. Ling Han's eyes narrowed slightly. Regulation of slaughter. Good that you know. Yu Yuan said proudly. He had been able to cultivate until dividing 9 souls because he had obtained a source power of heaven and earth, as well as 8 different incomparable natural treasures. The sole source power of heaven and earth was the regulation of slaughter. He had never shown it before. Everyone thought that he had only cultivated the regulations of light, and he had originally intended to leave this trump card to be used in the 1000 Academy tournament. In the last 1000 Academy tournament, he had only been at the 4th leaf and had not obtained the source power of heaven and earth yet. The fact that he had gained a source power of heaven and earth meant that he had heaven-defyingly good luck. This was something that even a great many ancestral kings would covet, and was also another reason why he had hidden it all this time. Yet now he could not hold himself back. Ling Han crooked a finger. "Come. I shall oblige." Yu Yuan's figure charged out. With a roar, the regulation of slaughter manifested into a long spear, as red as if it was dyed in blood. Boom! The spear shot out like lightning, intending to stab Ling Han to death. Ling Han still used the regulations of lightning, and used the fists of fury, meeting Yu Yuan's attack. In a battle of equals, whom had he ever feared? Pung! 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 The 2 great prodigies traded blows. Yu Yuan only parried a few strikes, and his expression changed drastically. That was because every punch he parried from Ling Han would cause his whole body to shudder and feel an indescribable discomfort. He could not believe it. Actually, he had not just cultivated the 2 regulations of slaughter and light, but had touched on every kind of regulation. However, he had focused on these 2 regulations and merely touched lightly on the rest. He had not studied them too deeply or thoroughly, but this did not prevent him from having a vague understanding of every kind of great Tao. The attack of regulations that Ling Han was presently delivering was definitely not ordinary. It was too powerful, surpassing the extent that a 2nd leaf should have. As expected of a monarch star, he had very good senses. That was because the regulation of lightning that Ling Han was presently channeling was indeed stronger. It had assimilated the regulations of 2 realms. However, What use was it even if he had good instincts? Yu Yuan was still being suppressed by Ling Han and had completely fallen into a disadvantage. Everyone was numb with shock, rendered completely incapable of speech. They knew that Ling Han was also a monarch star, but shouldn't it be a match of equals for two monarch stars to clash in a battle of equal cultivation levels? However, the present situation was completely one-sided. It was extremely clear that Yu Yuan was at a disadvantage and could only manage to parry. This was more like the crushing advantage that a monarch star had over a monarch tier. Why was it like this? They naturally did not know that Ling Han's evolution index was endlessly close to 11. What kind of concept was this? It meant that he was practically another level stronger than any ordinary monarch star, and that was indeed equivalent to the suppression that monarch stars had over monarch tiers. Boom! 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 Fists of fury shot out in a barrage, and Yu Yuan's expression became uglier and uglier. He used all the means he had and whatever ultimate moves that he knew, but he was ultimately still completely suppressed by Ling Han. The limit of 100 moves was close at hand, and he could no longer hold on any more. Yu Yuan's eyes were bloodshot. He could not accept losing to another in a battle of equals, and it was within 100 moves at that. Die! He roared in fury, and the lotus flower on his forehead instantly grew 8 leaves. He had released his suppression on his cultivation level and regained his full battle prowess. Boom! His battle prowess instantly exploded. Slicing out a palm, his strike directly ripped through space, capable of instantly slicing Ling Han into pieces. Ling Han humphed coldly and had already drawn the divine demon sword, sweeping it out in a sideways slice. Pooh! Yu Yuan's left wing instantly flew into the air, the light of blood filling the skies, as if the heavens itself were weeping in grief. Ah! Yu Yuan stepped back continuously while showing an expression of incredible agony, his only remaining wing flapping frantically. So what if he had exploded? Don't forget that Ling Han had a powerful weapon. It was because he could not hold up to the might of the divine demon sword that he was compelled to agree to a battle of equals with Ling Han. In his utter fury, he initially wanted to launch an unexpected attack on Ling Han, yet did not expect that Ling Han had been on guard against him all this while. As a result, it was instead his wing that had been severed. He lost. Yu Yuan lost. Did this mean that the world was about to change completely? This Ba was too frightening, wasn't he? In a battle of equals, he only needed around 100 moves to defeat Yu Yuan. He was too indescribably freakish. In the future, the world was Ba's, the era of Ba. Yu Yuan's fury could not be stemmed. His true strength was superior to Ling Han's by who knew how many times over. Yet because the latter had a god tool, he was completely helpless, and in a battle of equals, he actually was no match for Ling Han either, which made him feel a strong feeling of helplessness. This made him think back to those supreme freaks that he had encountered in the last 1000 Academy tournament. They had also caused this feeling of helplessness to rise up in him. No one making any more noise, right? Ling Han asked, smiling. Flopping down onto the ground, he took out a barbecue grill and then picked up the severed wing of Yu Yuan. After plucking all the feathers and using clean water to wash away the traces of blood and dust, he placed it on the barbecue grill. This, everyone grimaced. That was Yu Yuan's wing. The majority of essence of the angel race was concentrated in their 2 wings. To others, this was indeed a great nutritious tonic, yet you actually grilled it in public. This was too unreasonable, wasn't it? Hunyo and the other women chuckled, and naturally joined immediately. The 4 of them sat at a corner respectively, and were just waiting for the wing to be completely cooked. This caused the residents of the angel quarters to burst with fury. The insect race and holy beasts were stunned, while the demon race exploded with raucous cheers. They exulted. After bearing for so many years, a supreme prodigy had finally emerged from the demon quarters, capable of stomping all over even Yu Yuan. Yu Yuan stared daggers at Ling Han. There were two options available to him if he wanted to defeat this opponent. Firstly, he could get himself a supreme weapon as well, one that could compare to the divine demon sword. Secondly, he could advance further and cultivate the 11th secret. In that manner, his strength would leap into the ascending origin tier. Then, even if it was a punch delivered from a distance, he would be able to smash Ling Han into mush. Comparing the two options, it was naturally the latter that would be more easily realized. With a wave of his hand, he turned and left. Even if he stayed, it would only add to his grief. How could it be that he would be admiring these people chew on his own wing? With Yu Yuan's departure, the residents of the angel quarters, too, could not bring themselves to stay longer, and similarly returned to their own homes in dejection. This was clearly the angel quarters, yet it had become Ling Han's barbecue spot, and the others were all speechless from this. So aromatic! Hunyo salivated. This was the wing of a monarch star. Its nutrition value was not inferior to a great herb's, so she was naturally drooling. Ling Han, is it done yet? She asked delicately. Ling Han laughed and replied, Yes, almost done. This wing had already been roasted to golden brown, emanating an alluring aroma. To say nothing of the four of them that were practically drooling, even those angels that had closed their doors were swallowing secretly. The concentrated essence of a monarch star, an extremely nutritious tonic. After another while, Ling Han took the wing off the barbecue grill. He cut off 3 parts, which he gave to the 3 women, and then retained 1 part. This was to be given to the women inside the Black Tower. Their cultivation level was too low. It was enough for them to eat just a little bit. Otherwise, it would be too much for them, and excessive nutrition would kill them. The 4 of them feasted, and the sounds of many people gulping rang out from around them. This was really too aromatic, too alluring. When they had consumed this great feast, Ling Han patted his behind and stood up, returning to the demon quarters. The whole demon quarters had already erupted in uproar. Everyone was looking at him with eyes filled with admiration. If it were not that Ling Han was too aloof, there would be countless people approaching him for sure. He began to digest the essence inside the roasted meat. This was equivalent to a greatly nutritious celestial flower. Ling Han spent a whole 7 days to finally finish digesting it and gain the qualifications to break through to the 3rd secret. Chapter 23:18 Third Secret. Chapter 23:18 Third Secret. Initially, Ling Han had already reached the 2nd secret's late stage, and now he directly soared to the 2nd secret's peak stage with such nutrition. He swallowed a 1,000-year dream pill and entered into the time stream. Since the foreign realm had regulations of time, it naturally also had the time stream. However, it could only be entered either through using the 1,000-year dream pill or forcefully barging into the place with the overwhelming might of the heavenly venerable tier. But even a heavenly venerate could not match the power of heaven and earth. Once they left the time stream, all their memories gained there would be erased. The past and present could not be reversed, and the future could not be changed. Ling Han comprehended Tao in this place where time ended. There was no concept of time here. It was possible that countless years would pass in an instant, and countless years here could also be a second in the outside world. This was the unit of time that Ling Han had learned from Wally, and he had accepted this concept and adopted it. Compared to counting time for a single jaw stick or a heartbeat, minutes and seconds were much more precise. Moreover, it could be further precise by proceeding to millisecond and microsecond. In this place, Ling Han easily broke through to the 3rd secret, but he did not immediately return. Instead, he continued comprehension here until the effects of the 1,000-year dream pill were completely used up, and only then did his spirit return to his physical body. The heavenly tribulation immediately came. He went to endure the heavenly tribulation, and a day later his figure descended, having easily survived it. And in truth, his cultivation level had already reached the third secret's middle stage. The essence contained in Yuan's wing, was truly amazing. Previously, he had not expended all the essence in full at all, and now he had comprehended another Tao where time ended. It seemed like it was just a while, yet the time that had actually passed was endless. Thus, once Ling Han had endured the heavenly tribulation, he absorbed and digested fully the remaining essence inside his body, and his cultivation level directly soared to the third secret's middle stage. He returned to his quarters, yet immediately received a message from the academy that he had once again gained the qualification to participate in the 1,000 Academy tournament. Going back and forth like this, was it fun? Ling Han knew that the academy had seen how he had defeated Yuan in a battle of equals, and thus determinedly placed bets on him. Even if Ling Han could not win a good placing for the academy this time, there was probably no one that could manage to stop Ling Han in the next tournament. As a human, they naturally had to set their sights further. Of course, if he had been in the celestial realm, Ling Han would definitely have chosen just to cast this aside. Fuck, who do you think I am? Just coming at your slightest call and dismissed with a wave? But now this was the foreign realm, and Ling Han did not do anything willful. He was determined to understand the cultivation system of the foreign realm. That way, he could deal with it in the future. He also wanted to know just what kind of level this generation of young prodigies of the foreign realm had reached. If they could possibly reach the heavenly venerable tier, should he find a chance to kill them off in advance. Additionally, he discovered that the wings of the angel race were all like celestial medicines, and eating more wings could help his cultivation level soar straight upwards. So why shouldn't he go and get himself some more? He was sure that only the monarch stars of the angel race would let him enjoy these effects, and there were pitifully few of them, so he would only be able to encounter them in the 1,000 Academy tournament. If the Academy knew that he agreed to go because he wanted to eat chicken wings, those old geezers would probably be shooting fire from their eyes in their fury. Not too many days later, the 10 prodigies set out under the leadership of 2 ninth Lotus elites of the Academy, heading towards the 4 Splendor Academy. The 1,000 Academy tournament this time round was held at the 4 Splendor Academy, but there was a boundless distance separating the 2 locations. If they were just to simply fly on their journey, they would probably need tens of millions of years to reach their destination. But though they had set out earlier, there was only 100 years time left, and there was no way they could just journey there like that. What now? They would use the transfer formation. Then, there were transfer formations everywhere in the 4 Splendor Academy, which boundlessly shortened the distance between 2 locations. However, because the 4 Splendor Academy was really too far, they would still need about 30 years time even with using the transfer formation. That was because they could not simply take the next transfer formation after using the first transfer formation, but rather had to journey part of the way. The tournament team of 10 was still Yuan and 9 others that had emerged victorious from the selections. The ascending origin tiers leading the team were Yuan and Qi Shuang. Yuan was a member of the insect race, while Qi Shuang was a holy beast. The reason why no member of the angel race or demon race had been appointed as team leader was naturally because of the conflict between Ling Han and Yuan. This was to avoid any prejudice, which could lead to the whole team falling apart in the end. They increased their journeying speed, and after over a dozen days, they arrived at a city and then used the transfer formation for the first time. Traversing through space, they soon arrived at another city, but did not immediately continue their journey. Using a long-distance transfer formation would actually bring serious side effects to bear on the body. The physical body was under extremely unstable conditions. If one continuously used transfer formations, death would be a small matter. More importantly, one could burst in a massive explosion, destroying the transfer formation and the transfer passageway, and thus causing disastrous harm to others. Wally had also come with them. He disguised himself as a small ornament that hung from a corner of Ling Han's robes. One cannot continuously use the transfer formation, because traversing through space would affect the stability of the particles and cause chaos among the nuclear electrons. It could very possibly turn the human body into a supernuclear weapon, he explained. You have to understand that, in truth, every single existence is a creation of the heaven and earth, including us. The power of heaven and earth is constantly within us, but ordinary people are completely incapable of accessing it. According to the theories of the high-level dimension, every gram of quality that we expend could explode with a storm of energy capable of destroying a planet. You can just imagine just how terrifying our potential is. It was no wonder that the transfer formation could not be used continuously. It could make humans into a terrifying weapon. Given what you say, if we could use the power of heaven and earth, simply pick up a rock and we can explode with boundless power. Ling Han asked. That's right. Wally nodded. Those who can use a limited extent of the power of heaven and earth would be those so-called heavenly venerates of yours. Hence, the strength of heavenly venerable tier completely overwhelmed celestial kings. Even a ninth heaven's celestial king would only die a terrible death in front of a heavenly venerate. The power that both sides used was not on the same level at all. Ling Han felt strongly just how smart he had been to choose to cooperate with Wally. He had gained all the knowledge of a high-level dimension, and knowledge was the most central wealth of a realm. Cultivation techniques were actually a kind of knowledge as well, teaching you how to use regulations. After resting for 3 days and using the transfer formation in the city again, they arrived at another city. This time, they did not rest any longer, but rather continued to exit the city and journey onwards. That was because the next transfer formation was at a very distant location. The time they took to journey, there would be enough for them to dispel the side effects brought by using the transfer formation. And this was how they proceeded, stopping and continuing repeatedly on their journey. Occasionally, they would take a few days of rest, traversing the wide space of the foreign realm. Everyone did not waste their time. For those that had reached their cultivation level, they could cultivate just by walking and sleeping. It was only that their efficiency would be slightly lower than usual. 10 years later, they had already walked countless paths, and their speed was also slightly faster than they had expected. Half their journey had been completed. If everything went smoothly, they would be able to reach 4 Splendor Academy in another 10 years' time. On this day, they came out of a transfer formation to find some place to settle down. The next transfer formation was within this city itself. There was no need for them to journey elsewhere, and they could take a good rest for a while. However, they discovered that this city was extraordinarily familiar. Chapter 2319 Blood of Ancestral King. Chapter 2319 Blood of Ancestral King. Other cities would definitely not be as bustling as this, with so many people that it had become overcrowded. Cultivators of all shapes and sizes could be seen everywhere. There were members of various races, strong and weak, male and female, older and younger. Everyone was very curious. What exactly had happened here? Why had so many people come here? They made some inquiries. As it turned out, an auction would soon be held here, and a most precious treasure would be appearing at the auction. It was a bottle of blood from an ancestral king, and one that had reached 14th Lotus at that. When they heard this, everyone was extremely stirred up. Anything that belonged to a celestial king was a treasure. In truth, he was equivalent to a human-shaped celestial medicine, but no one could harvest him. And if one were to ask which part of this human-shaped great herb was the most valuable, that would undoubtedly and definitely had to be his blood essence. What was going on auction this time was only the blood of an ancestral king, not the blood essence of an ancestral king. In that case, the effects would be considerably poorer. Otherwise, the auctioneer would have long since advertised it far and wide. Upon further thought, it was true. With how rare blood essence was, even a celestial king could not possibly have a lot. It was the concentrated essence of a celestial king. Furthermore, would a celestial king sell off one of his body parts? If he wanted money, he would be able to get a countless amount easily. Hence, it was definite that this blood of an ancestral king had not been given out by an ancestral king voluntarily. It had to have either been spilled in a great battle, and someone just happened to pick it up, or it was a dead ancestral king, and someone harvested it from his corpse. To say nothing of Yu Yuan and the other immortal Palasteers. Even the hearts of those two ascending origin tier elites throbbed wildly, wanting nothing more than to take it for their own. In any case, there was still a lot of time, and there were not many days until the auction began. Thus, everyone decided to stay a few more days here, and then set out again after the auction was over. Everyone was rubbing their fists eagerly. They were determined to get this bottle of ancestral king blood, and quietly did an accounting of their personal wealth to see if it was enough to purchase this portion of ancestral king blood. Seeing how many people had come here, it was clear how valuable this bottle of ancestral king blood would be. By then, the competition would definitely be extremely intense. There were only 7 days left until the day of the auction. Thus, they did not rest too many days and set out, arriving at the auction site. Yu Yuan's longing was greatest. Even if he was a monarch star, and there was practically no bottleneck in the advancement of his cultivation, he would still need to accumulate enough power every time he broke through. Now, he needed a very long time to accumulate enough power so that he could store up enough for a timely burst, and rush up to the 11th secret in a single stroke. A bottle of ancestral king blood would definitely help him to take this step. Yu Yuan glanced at Ling Han unobtrusively. He only needed to take one step further, and he would deal with Ling Han. He would humiliate him in public and then kill him in secret afterwards, getting rid of this guy that had embarrassed him once and for all. Wu Ye and Sun Feng were not willing to admit weakness, either. They were still a long way off from 11th secret, but with the help of a bottle of ancestral king blood, they would definitely be able to see some hope. The others were about the same. Even Yuan's and Qi Shuang's eyes were glowing. If they had a large supply of ancestral king blood, who knew, they might be able to break through and become ancestral kings. Though this hope was pitifully small, they still decided to obtain this bottle of ancestral king blood, even if it meant losing all their fortune. After a while, they arrived at the auction site. Wow! Even though they had deliberately widened the auction site for the sake of the ancestral king blood, with 4 paths of entry in total, there was still a long line of people outside, who knew how many people were filled with yearning for this bottle of precious blood. The expressions of those like Yu Yuan and his group were not very good. They had limited wealth on them. They merely had some star stones to help in cultivation and 1 or 2 celestial medicines to help in breaking through or to save their lives in a pinch. But it definitely could not be a great herb that was the level of the celestial king tier. But others had come prepared, so how could it be easy to defeat these people? Previously, Ling Han had killed over 100 ancestral kings through trickery in the neutral zone, so he naturally possessed astonishing wealth. However, he was not much interested in ancestral king blood because though there were some ancestral kings that he had killed violently at the time, there were still a great many ancestral kings whose bodies had remained unscathed, and he had then stowed them into the Black Tower. If he wanted ancestral king blood, there would be a lot. In fact, he had a considerable amount of ancestral king blood essence as well. But if he were to directly use the ancestral king blood, the only possible result that would happen once he drank it would be death. There was too much power contained within, and the martial intent inside was too strong. It was not something that he presently could bear at all. If he wanted to consume it, he had to request the help of a supreme elite to help refine the harmful substances contained within. Otherwise, it would only be courting death. The fact that the ancestral king blood could be sold meant that the harmful substances within should already have been refined, and it could be directly used. What Ling Han was interested in was this technique of refining. If he could learn it, that would be equivalent to having obtained an astonishing amount of celestial king tier great herbs. He split from the group with an excuse, and did not even have the 3 women follow him. Instead, he found an isolated corner and made some alterations to his appearance. He had become a member of the angel race, and his aura also changed accordingly. However, he had not cultivated the regulations of light, and that would be revealed the moment he started a battle. The angel race could use the regulations of light by nature. Even if their main focus was not this type of regulations, they would still subconsciously use this regulation when they fought. He lined up and entered, and then sent a message to the staff of the auction house. "You said that you have something incredibly precious to sell." A while later, an elder appeared. He was an 8th Lotus elite who was also a member of the angel race, but dark gray had already appeared at the tips of his feathered wings. This was because he had experienced too many instances of a mortal's tribulation, and that had already affected his body. With a few more rounds, he should no longer be able to stand here. Instead, he would have boils on his head and pus flowing from underneath his feet, and could die at any moment. Ling Han nodded. At first, the one who had served him was only a junior worker, but once he showed his cultivation level and said that he had something important to be put on auction, it became this elder that came to serve him. "What is it?" the elder asked. Ling Han took out a jade bottle and placed it on the table. The elder picked it up and was just about to open it when he heard Ling Han say, "Be careful." He was unconcerned. Could it be that a ferocious beast was contained inside? With a paw, he uncorked the bottle, and an indescribable murderous aura instantly surged out, and his hand involuntarily trembled. Instantly, the bottle fell onto the ground. Ling Han moved quickly. Pa! He caught the bottle. Previously, he had fiddled with the corpses of ancestral kings. Though he still could not make direct contact with the body of an ancestral king, it was fine as long as there was a bottle between them, as long as the opening of the bottle was not facing him directly. Ling Han placed the bottle back on the table and then smiled faintly. The elder couldn't help but look embarrassed. Ling Han had clearly warned him beforehand, yet he had still almost dropped the bottle. Who knew what kind of great loss that would have resulted in if it had really been damaged from the fall? He looked stunned. He only had to probe that violent aura, and he knew that the substance in the bottle was extraordinary. He looked towards the bottle again, and the expression on his face changed immediately. As a professional, he immediately entered into work mode and set aside his previous embarrassment. Ancestral king blood. He paled in shock, and then his expression became strange. They had only obtained a portion of ancestral king blood after much difficulty, and now another bottle had appeared at this instance. Wasn't this too coincidental? However, it has not been refined. He frowned. This would affect the auction price. Chapter 2320. Spending exorbitantly. Chapter 2320. Spending exorbitantly. Does your auctioneer's business have the means to purify ancestral king blood? Ling Han asked. No. The elder shook his head, and then continued, This is a secret technique, and is only grasped in the hands of a minority of forces. However, you need not be concerned. After all, there is not much ancestral king blood in this world. True, what ancestral king would be letting out blood out of boredom? Yet, Ling Han thought, there are at least 100 ancestral king corpses that can be used inside the Black Tower. Just what kind of astounding wealth is this? Moreover, Ling Han had no plans on selling the ancestral king blood. Instead, he would retain it for his own use. In that case, he naturally wanted even more to obtain the method of refinement. Do you plan to trade this bottle of ancestral king blood for starstones, or to trade it for another item? The elder asked. If it is the former, we will collect 15% as service charge. If it is the latter, you have to pay us 100,000 starstones. The latter, Ling Han answered, and directly tossed over a spatial god tool. Then he took out some starstones, and it just happened he had 100,000 left. Then what do you want to trade for? The elder asked. He naturally hoped that Ling Han would choose the former option. The value of a portion of Ancestral King was definitely 100 million starstones or above. Ling Han did not hesitate and answered, "The method to refine ancestral king blood." The elder was surprised. He had already spoken very clearly, yet why was Ling Han still so dead set on it? With a thought, he couldn't help but inhale sharply and exclaim, "You do not just have one portion of ancestral king blood!" This number was definitely not small. Otherwise, even if you traded it for the method of refinement, so what? The increase in value would not be more than this portion of ancestral king blood presently, and it would still be a loss. Do you have an ancestral king in your family that can let out some blood any time you like? Though he was thinking this in his heart, the elder naturally would not be asking it out loud. A businessman should never be too curious. However, he still said something additional. "If you have more ancestral king blood, you can delegate us to help you sell it off. If there is a lot, our service charges can be further lowered. Furthermore, for our auction house, all personal information is definitely classified, and there is no need to worry about any trouble." Ling Han merely smiled in response. Firstly, he really had too much ancestral king blood, and there was no way he would take it all out to be auctioned off. And secondly, how could he possibly trust someone else so easily? Oh, it would absolutely be classified just because they said it would be classified information. Of course, he had disguised himself presently, and actually did not fear that anyone would know that the ancestral king blood had come from him. Most importantly, he, too, indeed needed ancestral king blood the Empress, and the others also needed to use it, and he would not be complaining no matter how much he had. The elder tried to persuade him further, but Ling Han had completely no intention of changing his mind. However, he did leave some room for negotiation. If this deal was successfully and smoothly completed, who knew, he could have a second portion of ancestral king blood to be auctioned off here. After everything was settled, Ling Han was invited to a private room. Though a deal of 100,000 starstones was indeed not much for the auction house, it could not be helped, as what Ling Han had offered was much too valuable. Thus, he was also given the VIP treatment. The inside of the auction building used regulations of space, and was another world entirely. Its structure was no different than that of any other auction building, but its size was over 100 times that of an ordinary auction building, and it could accommodate millions of people. Ling Han sat in a private room, and his visibility was extremely good, showing the high regard that the auction house had for him. Not too long later, the auction officially began. Wally regained human form and sat beside Ling Han. He had just awakened intelligence and was in the state of swift learning. However, what he previously learned was the knowledge of a high-level dimension, while now he was learning how to be human. He was entranced. According to him, he could start a certain mode, so he could simultaneously capture the voices and expressions of everyone in the area, and then analyze and calculate for his learning purposes. Meanwhile, Ling Han placed his attention on the items on auction. He could not be bothered with this curious child any longer. At the beginning, the auction items were very ordinary. As Ling Han watched and listened, he couldn't help but yawn, right until celestial medicine appeared, and only then did he become energized. Though it was not very old in age, it was still a celestial medicine, so it was still extremely valuable and could be used in medicine and alchemy. Ling Han naturally moved. He was definitely very rich. He had the wealth of over 100 ancestral kings, though those ancestral kings could not possibly carry all their wealth with them. Just a small portion was wealth equivalent to that of an entire nation. As long as it was a celestial medicine, he did not care how old it was or what kind of alchemical pill he could use it for. There was only one word for it: buy. Seeing him spending so exorbitantly, the people below and those in other private rooms cast frequent glances at him, seemingly wanting to find out who the wealthy man in this private room was. Ling Han's mischievous heart was stirred up. With a thought, he immediately assumed Yuan's appearance, and then shut off the formation in the private room. It could form a barrier that prevented the divine sense of others from penetrating. Of course, mere sight could not penetrate through either. Instantly, his appearance was displayed in front of the masses. Yu Yuan was also extremely curious about this mysterious person. However, he did not turn around repeatedly. Instead, he only turned around for a look when others exclaimed aloud. Then he was profoundly surprised. This person actually looked exactly like him. However, he was not too concerned either. The foreign realm was too large and had too many people. It was no rare event that two people would look similar. How arrogant! Someone smirked coldly. He disliked seeing how Ling Han spent so exorbitantly, as if he was better than everyone else. Hee, one should never show off wealth. Does he plan to have someone rob him? Haha, I say, everyone, let us not make competing bids. Later, we only have to rob this guy. Ling Han laughed, his expression very arrogant. If you want to rob me, just take a look at what kind of person you guys are yourselves, and estimate your own strength. Also, if you can't find me, just go ahead and come to 100 Battles Academy. My name is Yu Yuan. Pooh! Yu Yuan almost spat out a mouthful of blood. To say that this person was also named Yu Yuan was a coincidence, but if he was also at the 100 Battles Academy, that would be wrong. There was only one Yu Yuan in the academy, and that was he who was previously the only monarch star there. Did he have some grudge with this guy that the latter would actually lay a trap for him? To say nothing of him, even Yuan and Qi Shuang frowned. This person had bought a great many celestial medicines in a single stroke. This astonishing wealth would naturally induce envy from others. And now he was deliberately impersonating Yu Yuan, who knew how much trouble that could cause to their team. This guy was really too snarky, deliberately opening the barrier to expose a false identity. What he wanted was to draw the waters of calamity to another target. After Ling Han had shown enough of his arrogance, he unlocked the formation again. While he looked on curiously, he surpassed a great scholar who knew how many times in the grasping of knowledge. But on the matter of underhanded schemes, he was completely a layman and could not understand why Ling Han had done so. His understanding of worldly matters originated from calculation, and what had happened now was something that he could not obtain a result for no matter how hard he calculated. The auction continued, and after a whole 5 days, it finally came to the stage of the most valuable item. Everyone has waited long. The auctioneer pressed his hands down. Originally, we only had one portion of ancestral king blood for sale, but because of some special conditions, we now have another. Everyone heard this and all looked excited. Now, there were 2 portions of ancestral king blood. However, the auctioneer paused. The second portion of ancestral king blood has not been refined. Chapter 23-21 Refinement Technique. Chapter 23-21 Refinement Technique. When these words fell, at least 99% of the people immediately shook their heads. Without being refined, how could it be used? If it was directly consumed, that would be equivalent to having a blow from an ancestral king directly explode inside one's body. Who could bear that? They could not even touch it physically. The aura of an ancestral king was too domineering, possessing shocking destructive power. However, the remaining less than 1% of cultivators looked moved. The competition for unrefined ancestral king blood would definitely be smaller, and the final price would be far from comparable to that of refined ancestral king blood. To obtain a practically equivalent treasure with a lower price would naturally spell a great profit. They had a grasp of the refinement technique of ancestral king blood. "We get it. Get started," someone urged. "That's right. Get a move on." The auctioneer did not keep them hanging, but rather said, "However, the owner of this portion of ancestral king blood does not want to auction it off for starstones. Instead, he would like to trade for the refinement technique of ancestral king blood." A great many people exchanged looks. There was actually someone that wanted to use ancestral king blood to trade for its refinement technique? Hiss, unless he still had a large amount of ancestral king blood, who would do such an idiotic thing. However, ancestral kings were practically invincible in this world. Who would be able to keep an ancestral king in captivity for blood extraction? Everyone thought this was a strange thing, and felt an indescribable curiosity, wanting to grab the seller and interrogate him. Some people had set their eyes on the auction house instead. They only had to exert some pressure, and the auction house would definitely hand over the seller. By then it could not be helped. This deduction was too astonishing, actually trading ancestral king blood for its refinement technique. If it was not that he had an overwhelming amount of ancestral king blood, who would believe it? Yet Ling Han did not care what the masses were thinking. In any case, he had used his disguised persona to make the deal and had utter confidence in the heaven-deceiving technique. Furthermore, there would definitely be no ancestral kings among those that had come to participate in the auction. Would an ancestral king still need ancestral king blood? That was right. There were still differences in quality among ancestral kings, but in essence, they were extremely similar. Consuming the blood of another ancestral king would have practically zero benefit. Otherwise, the level of ancestral kings would have long descended into chaos. Immediately, a great many people communicated in secret with the auctioneer, wanting to use their own refinement technique to trade for the ancestral king blood, and the auction house presented the effects of the various refinement techniques to Ling Han so that he could study them and make his choice. Actually, this kind of secret technique was not overly precious, because there was practically no opportunity to refine an ancestral king's blood. Whether they had it or not would have completely no effects on the destiny of a clan or force. Hence, there were many people willing to make the trade. In the eyes of others, the value of a portion of ancestral king blood was much higher. Ling Han looked at the introduction of various refinement techniques. They all had obvious pros and cons. For example, a method with a higher conversion rate would need even more celestial medicines, and after conversion, the cost was actually not low at all, while for a method with lower expenses, the conversion rate was pitifully low. After a portion of ancestral king blood was refined, only 1/3 of the original amount would remain. Ling Han thought for a while, and then decided to choose the technique with a higher conversion rate. He was more willing to sacrifice more celestial medicines. In any case, he had the wealth. Once he made his choice, the bottle of ancestral king blood fell into the hands of an elite. That person grabbed the bottle and said smilingly, "Mr. Seller, if you have more ancestral king blood, you can send me a message. I am staying in the western sector of this town, Royal Horse Inn. I will wait 3 days for you." He did not know who the seller was, so these words were not directed at anyone specific. He was merely talking into empty air. Ling Han acted as if he had not heard. He had already obtained the refinement technique for ancestral king blood, so how could he possibly still be handing over any more ancestral king blood to anyone else? "Let me see," Wally said suddenly. Ling Han handed over the jade piece to him. The refinement technique was stored inside. He had already memorized it, and even if Wally did not return the memory crystal to him, he would not be worried either. Wally took it and placed it on his forehead. A while later, he said, "According to my deductions, this technique can be further improved, boosting the conversion rate to 97%. Additionally, the ingredients expended could also be decreased by 1/3. Ling Han couldn't help but feel overjoyed. He did not suspect that Wally was lying at all. This guy had not learnt this skill at all. "Then go ahead and get started." Wally nodded and said, "I need 56 hours, 39 minutes, and 11 seconds. After saying this, he closed his eyes. Flashes of light flickered on his body. He had entered calculation mode. Ling Han waited patiently. Next it would be that refined portion of ancestral king blood. At first he had wanted to purchase it, but when he thought of the overwhelming amount of ancestral king blood he already had, it was truly unwise to compete with these people. It was possible that the price would shoot up 10 times or even higher. Then what was the point? He did indeed have a lot of money, but it was not so much that he could spend it wastefully. The competition was intense beyond expectations. Ancestral king blood was really too rare. It was practically equivalent to a celestial king tier great herb, and its effects were naturally extremely outstanding as well. Thus, this kind of intensity seemed to be logical as well. Wu Ye, Sun Feng, Yu Yuan, and the others were all placing bids loudly, as if what they were bidding were not starstones, but completely ordinary rocks that had no value. But there were a great many people that were even more frenzied than them. Very soon, the group had no choice but to withdraw from the competition dejectedly. "Let us put our money together, and then discuss afterwards how we are to split the ancestral king blood among us," Yu Yuan immediately said. They began to put their money together, but they had only made 3 bids, and their wealth was already insufficient. At this time, they could no longer be concerned about the strife between the angel and demon race, and gathered all their money together. In fact, even Yuan and Qi Shuang took out all their wealth. But it was still insufficient. By now, everyone had gone crazy. Yu Yuan gritted his teeth and suddenly took out a celestial medicine and said, "Add this in as well." This was a small herb that was only half a foot tall. It was completely jade green in color, as if it was forged from jade itself. Upon a closer look, there were veined patterns on the leaves, but the exact details could not be distinguished at all. 9th lotus level celestial medicine. Qi Shuang immediately exclaimed, "Jade dragon herb, right?" Yu Yuan nodded. "This is what the clan has given me to use when I break through to 9th lotus. But breaking through to 9th lotus is only a small matter for me. Instead, it is the 11th leaf that is the true difficulty. If it were not for the sake of breaking through to 11th leaf, he would have broken through to 9th lotus long ago. That was because he could take this step at any time from the peak stage of the 5th leaf onwards. However, he had great ambitions and naturally could not be satisfied with mere 6th leaf, 7th leaf, and the like. Instead, he was determined to attain the 11th leaf. A 9th lotus level celestial medicine was naturally valuable, and after negotiation, the seller also agreed to his offer of using the jade dragon herb to cover part of the price. After paying such a great price, this portion of ancestral king blood finally fell into the hands of Yu Yuan and his group. It was not just him alone, but also included Qi Shuang, Yuan, Sun Feng, and the others. All of them had shared the costs. This was the final auction item, and now that it had been auctioned off, the auction naturally ended. However, a great many people were smirking coldly. They would not give up the matter so easily. Instead, they had still set their eyes on the seller of the first portion of ancestral king blood. They now were going to exert pressure on the auction house so that the latter would reveal the personal information of the seller. Ling Han chuckled and had Wally turned back into a hanging ornament, which he hung on his own robes. Then he simply strode outside. He had already taken the form of the demon race. Who would be able to make a connection between him and that member of the angel race previously? Chapter 23-22. The Passageway Crumbles. Chapter 23-22. The Passageway Crumbles. After Yu Yuan and the others had gotten the ancestral king blood, they naturally exited the auction house at the first possible moment and left via a transfer formation. Though there were 2 9th Lotus elites guarding their group, who knew how many people had set their eyes on the ancestral king blood, they definitely could not stay too long here. Ling Han returned to the team. Though everyone was slightly curious where he had gone, they definitely could not connect him with the person who had drawn the waters of calamity to them and who was also the seller of the ancestral king blood. There was only one word for it. How could Ling Han possibly have so much wealth? They arrived outside the transfer formation, and with a flash of light, "Show!" their figures immediately vanished. "Fuck, we are too late." A group of 5 caught up with them, and they all had 9th Lotus on their foreheads. Where did those people go? One of them grabbed the guy that managed the transfer formation. They have gone to Mad Cloud City," the guy replied shakily, feeling like his whole body was shaking. "Quick, transfer us over to Mad Cloud City as well," another 9th Lotus elite demanded. The guy looked like he was caught in a dilemma. "My lords, they have not finished the transfer. If another transfer is started at this moment, It is possible that the spatial passageway will be destroyed, and it is unknown where you will end up. Pa, a ninth Lotus elite moved, and directly smashed the guy's head into mush. He looked menacingly at another servant and asked. He was not obedient. What about you? I am obedient. I am obedient. The servant hurriedly started the transfer formation. Shio! The transfer formation activated. After a flash of light surged past, the 5 of them immediately vanished. But only after a while a loud bang rang out. The transfer formation actually exploded, and as the power of space surged out in a wave, this town was practically razed to the ground. And in the spatial passageway, Ling Han and his group felt a sudden tremor. A strong wave suddenly appeared in space, and all of them could not stand firmly, continuously swaying to and fro. Oh no! The spatial passageway is about to explode. We must immediately tear a rip in space and flee. Qi Shuang and Yuan both paled in shock. If space really exploded and the destructive force swept past, there would be no one that would be spared aside from ancestral kings at minimum. The 2 Ninth Lotus elites hurriedly exerted their full efforts and tore a hole in space. The whole group hurriedly leapt out. However, what was a spatial passageway? Traveling 3 meters here could possibly correspond to a distance of tens of thousands of km outside, and only in that way would journeying time be saved. Hence, the time that everyone felt outside was also different. As long as there was the slightest bit of difference, where they arrived in the outside world would also be overwhelmingly far apart. Ling Han naturally grabbed Hunyao and the other women. Worst come to worst, he would also draw the 3 women into the Black Tower, but it could not be done with a random spatial god tool. It was extremely possible that it would suddenly shatter, and if a spatial god tool exploded in the void, all the people and items inside would be scattered to who knew where. Shio, shio, shio! One after another, they were thrown out of the spatial passageway, and a boundless distance was between every single one of them. Ha 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 ha! Yu Yuan suddenly laughed loudly. At present, he was inside a small valley, and it was completely silent. If it was just that, he naturally could not be so excited. However, that bottle of ancestral king blood was still with him. It was very simple. The price he had paid was highest, so the ancestral king's blood was passed to him for safekeeping. They had all decided to use the transfer formation to go somewhere else. When they had completely tossed the followers off their tail, they would then decide how this bottle of ancestral king blood would be split among them and how much each person was entitled to. But now, everyone had disappeared, and he naturally had no further need to share the ancestral king's blood with others. It should be known that when the spatial passageway exploded, anything could be destroyed. Then it would be nothing strange if there was a bottle of ancestral king blood that was destroyed as well, right? Bah, make sure you don't die, he declared with menacing eyes as he uncorked the bottle without hesitation and rubbed the ancestral king blood on himself. He opened all the pores on his body to absorb the energy essence contained within. With a cultivation level like his, he could not directly consume the ancestral king blood, but rather had to absorb it through his skin. Otherwise, even if it had been refined, it could still easily cause him to explode. He wanted to immediately break through to the 11th leaf. As long as he had taken this step, his battle prowess would soar to the 9th lotus, and killing Ling Han would naturally be an easy matter by then. Once, twice, 3 times, he only had to rub a bit of ancestral king blood every time. If he rubbed too much, he would firstly not be able to bear it, which would be equivalent to committing suicide, and secondly, the essence inside the ancestral king blood would disperse rapidly with the passing of time, causing an astronomical waste. He had long since attained 10th leaf's peak stage. Every time he absorbed the ancestral king's blood, his stores of energy would increase slightly. When there were just a few drops left of the ancestral king blood, a frightening aura suddenly surged within his body. It was like a wild tsunami wave in the ocean. Pung, 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 wherever the aura passed, all the mountain rocks around him were shattered into bits. Kwang! Thunderclouds gathered densely in the skies. The heavenly tribulation was here. He took his final step in the immortal palace tier and advanced to the height of 11th secret. As long as he survived the heavenly tribulation, his cultivation level would be comparable to the ascending origin tier. Even if there was an astonishing gap between the 3 minor levels of the ascending origin tier, the battle prowess of a monarch star would still be enough to overwhelm someone who had achieved minor accomplishment in the ascending origin tier. Come, come. Yu Yuan laughed madly with his figure shooting into the air, meeting the heavenly tribulation of his own volition. He could no longer hold himself back. After enduring the heavenly calamity, he would set out to find Ling Han and tear that detestable guy into pieces while taking advantage of this opening when their group had yet to reunite. Not too far away, 5 Ninth Lotus elites cast their eyes over. Someone is enduring a heavenly tribulation. It can't be that those guys have used the ancestral king blood and have now begun to break through, right? Fuck, we have to immediately rush there. These 5 people naturally were those people that had forcefully started the transfer formation and the culprits that had caused the spatial passageway to crumble. They were completely unharmed because they were all at the 9th Lotus. Very soon, they had gathered once more and continued to search for the whereabouts of the group from 100 Battles Academy. Their figures darted quickly and soon arrived at the valley where Yu Yuan was undergoing the heavenly tribulation. This is a great 9th Lotus tribulation. Strange, I clearly have not sensed any qualitative change in spiritual power. Gasp! 8th Lotus 11th Leaf! All 5 of them exclaimed simultaneously. Only an 8th Lotus 11th Leaf's battle prowess would directly soar to the 9th Lotus in a situation when there was no change to his spiritual power. That's right. Yu Yuan's figure descended. He had already finished his heavenly tribulation. His eyes swept over them, and he asked calmly, there is no way that the spatial passageway would explode for no reason. Was it because of you people? He was a monarch star, and not only did he have astonishingly high natural talent in cultivation, his intelligence and wits were naturally top grade as well. If he had still been a 10th leaf, he naturally could only have fled immediately. But now he had advanced into the 11th leaf, so his cultivation level was comparable to the 9 Lotus, and his battle prowess overpowered even peak stage 9th Lotus First Leaf, so he naturally had utter confidence. Hand over the ancestral king blood, a 9th Lotus elite demanded calmly. Isn't this guy that arrogant profligate from the auction house? Someone recognized Yu Yuan. That's right, it is this guy. The 5 of them were all overjoyed. This guy had obtained who knew how much celestial medicines, and even if they were not as valuable as the ancestral king blood, it was still enough to make anyone drool. Haha, this is really our gift from the heavens. They dispersed, surrounding Yu Yuan. A muscle involuntarily twitched in Yu Yuan's cheek. Who exactly was that bastard that had screwed him over? If he really had gotten so many celestial medicines, he would have conceded. But the crux of the matter was that he was merely an innocent scapegoat for another. He was really too displeased with this. Hand over the celestial medicines and the ancestral king's blood, the 5 declared coldly. And then we can leave your corpse intact. Chapter 2323. Using the ancestral king blood, consecutive breakthroughs. Chapter 2323. Using the ancestral king blood, consecutive breakthroughs. They would definitely kill Yu Yuan to keep the secret. Thus, they were already being extraordinarily merciful to be willing to leave him an intact corpse. Yu Yuan was unafraid. He was a monarch star. As long as their cultivation level was equal, he would be invincible. Just in time. I can test myself on you guys, he declared menacingly. Before he killed Ling Han, he would use these 5 people as a sacrificial offering. How could the spatial passageway have crumbled for no reason? Ling Han, the Empress, and the others also appeared in a small forest. There was a massive spot after an explosion where they landed and was completely barren. The chaotic stream of spatial energy that had seeped out when they had rushed out had caused such great damage. Was someone sniping us from behind? The Empress asked. Their group had obtained the ancestral king blood, which would definitely be coveted by others. Then it was not impossible that they would be tailed so someone could make a move on them. That should be it. Ling Han nodded. Then, should we now go and meet up with the others? Bewitching Maiden Ro asked. Let's go. They traveled a few days and did not encounter Yuan or Qi Shuang. Yet Wally turned back to human form first. I have already finished the modifications, he said as light shot from his eyes, forming a screen in front of him. Immediately, endless scenes flashed past. In his previous studies of the refinement technique for ancestral king blood, Ling Han had already had a vague grasp, and now seeing Wally's demonstration, he couldn't help but nod repeatedly. With a combination of the two, he had extremely large gains. He did not walk any further and said, I have to study it first. He entered into the Black Tower and comprehended the technique beneath the reincarnation tree. Only a day later, he began the refinement of the ancestral king's blood. The first time ended in failure. Second time was also a failure. Third time, he failed endlessly. Thankfully, there were many ancestral king corpses inside the Black Tower. Even if he failed a few hundred times, it would not completely use up his ancestral king blood supply. After all, he would only take a bit every time. By his 26th attempt, Ling Han finally succeeded. Actually, this was alchemy, using medicinal ingredients to dispel the dominating factors inside the ancestral king blood so that it could be used by cultivators that had low cultivation levels. In a single stroke, he had refined several hundred portions, and only then did he stop for a rest. I have deduced the refinement technique of ancestral king blood essence based on this. Only then did Wally speak slowly. He really had extremely good patience, finally saying his next words after such a long time. Give it to me. Ling Han was elated. He had just about used an ancestral king, but still had no idea how to handle the blood essence. Wally did not have the habit of keeping others hanging. Immediately, he handed the new refinement technique over to Ling Han. Ling Han stayed another several days under the reincarnation tree, and then continued to start refining ancestral king blood essence. Because he had already gained a certain amount of experience, he had only failed 7 times, and then already refined the ancestral king blood essence. However, even if it is refined, the energy in the blood essence is too shocking. It can still only be used after advancing into ascending origin tier. Ling Han couldn't help but shake his head, feeling slightly sorry. The effects of blood essence were stronger than ordinary ancestral king blood essences, by who knew how many times. Yet he could not use it now. It was truly a pity. Come, everyone, let's not journey first. I have something for you. Ling Han gave a lot to them. He supplied ancestral king blood, just like it was ordinary wine, bottle by bottle. Whoever wanted it just had to directly rub a bottle of it on themselves. The women naturally followed his lead. Since Ling Han said that they should pause their journey, everyone naturally stopped with no worries and began cultivating with the ancestral king blood. Our cultivation level is too low. In the 1000 Academy tournament, there should be a great many people whose strength is superior to ours. Hence, what is important now is to increase our cultivation level. Ling Han and the others rubbed the ancestral king blood on themselves, and then began comprehending Tao beneath the reincarnation tree. An astonishing amount of energy as well as the martial comprehension of an ancestral king were contained in the ancestral king blood. After dispelling the murderous and dominating aura inside, it was an extremely precious treasure for a cultivator, comparable to a celestial king tier great herb. Just how many celestial king tier great herbs were there? In history, aside from a super great war breaking out between 2 realms, having so many ancestral kings die in a single battle would only be that time when Ling Han had killed them with trickery, so his gains were astonishing. Only a month later, Ling Han had reached the peak stage of the third secret. He consumed a 1,000-year dream pill and entered into the time stream, arriving at the place where time ended. He harvested the power of time there to build his fourth secret palace. Then he began to endure the heavenly tribulation. After successfully advancing to the fourth secret, Ling Han did not stop, but rather continued using ancestral king blood to increase his cultivation level. However, though ancestral king blood was precious, it could not be used continuously, or its effects would diminish. But Ling Han was very wealthy and was not concerned at all. All he wanted was the swift advancement of his cultivation level. Hence, he was spending very lavishly. Anyone beneath Celestial King tier would be throwing up blood at this. You were really too wasteful. Yet Ling Han was completely unconcerned. He had lots of ancestral king corpses, so what was the point of retaining them? Moreover, wouldn't he still have ancestral king blood essence after advancing to the ascending origin tier? What was the most important now was cultivation level. If you raise your cultivation level so swiftly, your foundations will be unstable, Wally told him truthfully. Ling Han nodded. I know. I will turn around to recultivate my foundations after I have cultivated the 11th secret, and only after I have perfected my foundations will I then break through to the ascending origin tier. Without a sufficient cultivation level, he could only use the divine demon sword to intimidate his enemies. This did not correspond to his Tao heart. Having his own strength was what it meant to be truly strong. The cultivation of the Empress and the others also soared madly. With how valuable the ancestral king blood was, and how it was spent on them like it was worth nothing now, it would be strange if their cultivation levels did not increase madly. Of course, the fastest was Ling Han. After all, he was the true owner of the Origin Magic Cube, and had once been an overlord of a realm, so his knowledge of regulations surpassed that of everyone else. The Empress and the others had just advanced to the 6th secret, but Ling Han had already rushed to the 5th secret. Furthermore, it was like this speed could not be inhibited at all. Without the slightest pause, it instead became even faster. When Ling Han advanced to the 5th secret, he had also cultivated the greatest eternity immortal physique, which allowed him to turn himself into the flow of time. It not only could be used in battle, but could also help Ling Han truly grasp the secrets of time, and he would be able to speed up his own time, as if he had entered into a time cultivation chamber and greatly increased the speed of his cultivation. The 6th secret, 7th secret, 8th secret, 9th secret, 10th secret. Ling Han's rate of cultivation was shockingly fast. It could not be helped. Who asked him to possess the ancestral king blood, the origin magic cube, and the reincarnation tree? In just a mere 50 years, he had already soared from the 3rd secret all the way to the 10th secret. No one would be able to believe this if he told them. The Empress and Hunyo had also attained this cultivation level, but none of them had been able to advance into the 11th secret. This would need too much accumulation of energy, and even if they possessed ancestral king blood, they would still be unable to make the leap in a single step. As for bewitching Maiden Row, she stopped at the 6th secret. Her potential could only allow her to go so far, and being able to reach the 6th secret was already extremely remarkable. Looks like we will not be able to break through for the moment. Let us find and meet up with the others first. They set out. Of course, they headed to a city nearby. If they still could not find Qi Shuang or Yuan, they would have to go to the Four Splendor Academy by themselves. In any case, there was still around 40 years of time left, and they would not miss out on this great event. They were in a mountainous area and had only found a mountain village after traveling for a good few days. Upon inquiry, they found out that they had completely gone against their original goal. The nearest city was in the opposite direction. After making some adjustments, they set out once more on their journey. Bah, I've finally found you. A cold voice rang out. It was Yu Yuan. Chapter 23-24. Fierce Battle with Yu Yuan. Chapter 23. 24 Fierce Battle with Yu Yuan. The present Yu Yuan did not have the calm and dashing appearance he had previously had, but rather looked more like a refugee. His clothes were torn and ripped, and if it was not for the fact that he had an astonishing aura, Ling Han would really think that someone had impersonated him. Ling Han chuckled. "What is it, my obedient son? Fallen to the streets and compelled to sell yourself? You are still speaking cheekily now, but it is not the slightest bit beneficial to you," Yu Yuan said menacingly. He had been evading the pursuit of those 5 Ninth Lotus elites all these years, but the reason why a monarch star was a monarch star was naturally because he had steadfast determination and willpower. Thus, not only did this kind of pursuit not drive him to despair, it instead caused his fighting spirits to soar even higher. He was sure that he would be able to perfect his cultivation of the 8th Lotus not too long afterwards, and then advance into 9th Lotus. Those 5 people were only grinding stones that made him stronger. Of course, he was actually also very depressed, having become the scapegoat for someone else for no reason. He released his own aura, and the might of the 11th leaf surged out, as if he was a divine overlord. Ling Han was surprised and said, "I had not thought that you would have actually advanced into the 11th leaf. No wonder you became so confident all of a sudden. Oh, you were the one who had used that bottle of ancestral king blood?" Yu Yuan's expression changed slightly as Ling Han had hit the nail on the head. "Something that is everyone's property has instead been used by you alone. You are a truly selfish person," Ling Han stated calmly. "What do you know?" Yu Yuan scoffed. "I am a monarch star, and only if it is used on me would the ancestral king blood be the most effective. Otherwise, given to others, it would just be a waste. Whether it would be a waste or not is the business of others. You took someone else's property and still act so shameless. I look down on you." Ling Han wagged a finger at him. Yu Yuan was extremely furious. His initial intentions had been to play around with Ling Han and only kill the latter when he was satisfied, but this guy seemed to have no brains at all, actually daring to talk back to him even at this moment. "You are courting death." Yu Yuan moved aggressively. Boom! A frightening aura surged out. This was a 9th Lotus level super elite. Whether in the celestial realm or the foreign realm, ascending origin tiers could be considered elites and could gain a place even in the 9th heaven celestial king tier forces. At present, Yu Yuan possessed 9th Lotus level battle prowess. When he moved, winds and clouds changed, and even the heavens paled in color. Ling Han released a battle cry, clenching a fist to greet the oncoming attack. Utter recklessness. Yu Yuan smirked coldly. The other party actually still dared to face him head-on. His brain had to be damaged. Pum! In this exchange, Ling Han was instantly sent flying back, but his figure immediately bent and he already landed. He stood steadily, and aside from the fact that his face was slightly flushed, there was absolutely nothing off in his appearance. Who asked him to have gotten countless celestial medicines? Added with the refinement of ancestral king blood, he had pushed the indestructible heavens scroll to a level that corresponded to his cultivation level, which was enough to bear ascending origin tier attacks. Yu Yuan's eyes involuntarily bulged madly as he was completely incapable of believing what he had just seen. "You have actually reached the 10th leaf," he practically shouted out. "Are you even human?" Yu Yuan had used a whole million years, and even then he had just raised his cultivation level from the 4th leaf to 10th leaf, and this was with the Academy sparing no expense and supplying him with innumerable cultivation resources. But in Ling Han's case, it was just a mere 50 years, and he had actually become a 10th leaf. This was something that Yu Yuan could not believe. Even if Ling Han had used the highest grade of time cultivation chamber, it would already have been inconceivable enough if this little bit of time had been enough for him to increase his cultivation level by 1 or 2 leaves. Unless there was an ancestral king that damaged his own cultivation level, sparing no expense to help him. But what ancestral king would be so stupid to damage his own cultivation level just to help an 8th lotus increase his cultivation level by that 1 or 2 leaves? Never expected it, right? Ling Han chuckled. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. Yu Yuan roared loudly. This was unacceptable and could not be accepted. Ling Han sighed. Even trash like you has advanced to the 11th leaf. Yet I am only a 10th leaf. The heavens are really unfair. Hearing his grumbling complaints, Yu Yuan was even more outraged. He had already been a 10th leaf in the first place, all right? He had just improved by a minor level. And in comparison, Ling Han's increase in cultivation level was practically an explosion. Just how have you managed to improve? He calmed down, wanting to know Ling Han's secret. What business is it of yours? Ling Han scoffed. Unless he had absolute confidence that he could kill the other party, how could he possibly reveal his own secrets to Yu Yuan? Yu Yuan took a deep breath. It's fine even if you don't speak now. When I capture you and search your soul, there is no way that your secrets will be hidden from me any longer. Though he was only a minor level superior to Ling Han, the gap between the 10th leaf and 11th leaf was a leap in quality. Why had he been stuck on this stage for so many years? That was because after he took this step, his battle prowess directly soared to 9th lotus. Otherwise, an 8th lotus would ultimately just be 8th lotus. Hence, he had absolute confidence. Ling Han drew the women into the Black Tower. Yu Yuan was a strong foe, and Ling Han could not guarantee that he would still be able to protect the women completely in an intense battle with the other man. What reason was there for him to stay on guard constantly? Come, I'll play with you. Ling Han crooked a finger at Yu Yuan. Recklessness. Yu Yuan moved. Boom, 9th lotus level battle prowess surged, and he was like a great demon god. Ling Han didn't dodge, and met the attack, choosing to confront Yu Yuan directly. Boom, boom, boom. Yu Yuan naturally was stronger. The leap from the 10th leaf to 11th leaf was really too great, and even though Ling Han had assimilated the regulations of 2 realms, and his battle prowess in a battle of equals had already surpassed the level of a monarch star, it was still useless. It could not compensate for this massive gap. Thankfully, his physique was tough enough, his defenses having reached a frightening level. He had just spat a little blood, even after being continuously blasted backwards by Yu Yuan. Yu Yuan was also speechless, but he was even more curious about Ling Han's secret now. If he could grasp all of Ling Han's strong points, then he would definitely be able to become the strongest monarch star. He laughed loudly, his offensive becoming more rapid. Ling Han also attacked with his full efforts. His cultivation level had improved too quickly, so it was inevitable that he would have the weakness of unstable foundations. But battling this kind of elite in a life-or-death battle would undoubtedly increase his real battle prowess to a great extent. It was only in real battle that his grasp of regulations could be rapidly increased. I say, why is your wing still not recovered? Ling Han pointed at Yu Yuan's wing. Previously, he had sliced it off, and though it had now grown back out again, it was only the pitifully small size of a chicken's wing. It's not enough for me to eat. He pretended to feel sorry. Yu Yuan exploded in fury. Ling Han's strength was freakish, and his defenses were freakish, but all this could not compare to his mouth. It was practically capable of causing someone to die from pure fury. I will kill you! Kill you! Yu Yuan roared furiously, striking even quicker. If he could not kill Ling Han with his own hands, he would definitely be unable to vent his fury. In his utter rage, his battle prowess did indeed soar greatly, and even if Ling Han had a tough physique, he was still completely bruised and battered. Ling Han fought intensely. His fighting spirit was also blazing madly, and he was using Yu Yuan's hand to temper himself. That's about it. After the two battled for 10 days, Ling Han revealed a mad grin and took out a bottle. It's useless even if you consume celestial medicines. Yu Yuan declared menacingly. The toughness of Ling Han's physique was definitely not inexhaustible. Under Yu Yuan's mad barrage of attacks, it had already reached its limits. He only had to put in some more effort, and he would definitively be able to punch through it. Ling Han uncorked the bottle and poured crimson, red blood on himself. An ancestral king's blood. Yu Yuan's eyes immediately widened. Chapter 23-25 Run. Chapter 23-25 Run. Yu Yuan was naturally stunned. He had already emptied all his pockets and had just obtained a portion of ancestral king blood. Yet Ling Han actually could produce another portion as well. If it was not for the fact that Ling Han's bottle was really too full, he would suspect that Ling Han had used some kind of trick to steal that bottle inside his spatial god tool. Otherwise, how else would the latter have obtained a bottle of ancestral king blood? No. He shuddered. With the pouring of this ancestral king blood, aura soared from Ling Han's entire person like a smoke signal, surging skywards and turning into various forms and seals. This image was too astonishing. It was like an ancestral king was about to manifest from the blood. This was ancestral king blood essence. Yu Yuan exclaimed in shock, feeling his heart throb wildly, his eyes filled with disbelief. Ling Han smiled slightly. Good insight. Yu Yuan couldn't help but feel bitter and hateful. Ancestral king blood essence was too precious and could have extraordinary effects even on a 9th lotus. That was blood essence, and even an ancestral king himself did not have much. It was equivalent to the very most valuable part of a celestial medicine. He glared harshly at Ling Han. As he saw it, Ling Han had already fallen into his hands, so everything that Ling Han had actually belonged to him. In other words, Ling Han had used the ancestral king blood essence that belonged to Yu Yuan. Damn it 10,000 times over. Even for a monarch star like himself, every step further in the 9th lotus could not be accomplished without several 100 million years, or even several billion years. And if there was a bottle of ancestral king blood essence that could completely cut down that time by half or even more. So how could he not feel terrible? You are truly worrying unnecessarily. Ling Han shook his head, and with a casual wave of his hand, a great many bottles appeared on the ground. He uncorked them one after another, and then stowed them back into the black tower one by one. Yu Yuan's expression had already turned from shocked to complete numbness, because these many bottles all contained ancestral king blood, and there were even 2 bottles of blood essence. When Ling Han stowed all the bottles back into the black tower, Yu Yuan's eyes had become extremely heated. There were actually still another 2 bottles of ancestral king blood essence. It was all his. Bah! I have to offer my thanks for gifting me such great fortune, Yu Yuan said arrogantly. Sigh, though you very sincerely called me father, I still have to leave all these things for my real son. I have no interest in someone like you, Ling Han said smilingly, mocking Yu Yuan again without the slightest bit of concern. Yu Yuan's eyes were cold. Winning a battle of words will not help you in the slightest. Bite me? Ling Han smiled. I'll kill you. Yu Yuan moved. He could not wait to kill Ling Han and snatch all the treasures the latter possessed. Even without the ancestral king blood essence, merely that large amount of ancestral king blood was enough to drive him to madness. This time, Ling Han did not fight head-on, but rather evaded with a movement technique. He was absorbing the energy in the ancestral king blood essence. When breaking through in a short while, ancestral king blood was no longer capable of helping him much because the ancestral king blood he had refined was really too copious, so his body had developed a very strong immunity to it. But with how violent the ancestral king blood essence was, only an ascending origin tier could absorb it. Though he was freakish, he was only a 10th secret after all. Under the barrage of the ancestral king blood essence, The physique that he had taken pride in could not withstand a single blow at all. His skin crackled, revealing bright red flesh, and then dropped piece after piece, revealing the eerie white bones within. Ah! Ling Han roared. Though his body was cracking, he still felt an overbearing energy growing inside his body, and it was rapidly raising his cultivation level. It was as if he had gone mad. His other hand held the origin magic cube, extracting the power of regulation from within, and increasing his cultivation level. You were the one who had auctioned off the first portion of ancestral king blood. Yu Yuan suddenly said. No wonder you wanted to trade for the refinement technique of ancestral king blood. Haha, all this is just paving the way for me. You have really overestimated yourself. You are but a mere 10th leaf, yet dare to refine the ancestral king blood essence. I do not have to move at all, and you will be crushed by the power of the ancestral king. He stopped. The ancestral king blood essence on Ling Han released a majestic light, turning into swords, sabers, axes, spears, and other weapons. Every weapon was covered with frightening seals. He did not dare to attack at all, or he would only be committing suicide. This was equivalent to an ancestral king unleashing his might. Even if he was a monarch star, so what? Without having stepped onto this cultivation level, he was completely unqualified to be a match for one. Ling Han bared his mouth in a grin. His whole body was bathed in blood, bones to be seen everywhere, looking terrifying and distorted, yet his fighting spirit was still soaring. He dared to do this because his physique had already reached ascending origin tier in level. Otherwise, how would he have been able to hold up to the previous mad barrage of attacks from Yu Yuan? This was the basis for his confidence in refining the ancestral king blood essence. He liked taking risks, but all the risks he took were because either he had enough confidence or he had an alternative plan. Energy poured like an ocean into his body, and Ling Han howled in fury, feeling like he was about to explode, yet all the blood and flesh in his body had already been shed completely, and only a skeleton was left behind. He wanted to drain this power. He charged out, clenching his fist, and shot a punch at Yu Yuan. Yu Yuan paled in shock, and did not dare take it head-on at all. He hurriedly bounced back in evasion. He was not afraid of Ling Han's battle prowess, but the present Ling Han was covered completely in ancestral king blood essence, and had been completely unleashed. That ferocity was like an ancestral king had boosted Ling Han with a technique. Whoever unwisely attacked him would only be crushing himself to dust. This guy was too despicable. He had clearly committed suicide, yet wanted to drag him into it as well. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "If you are so awesome, don't run. Come, fight me, your father, for 300 exchanges." He communicated these words through divine sense. Yu Yuan responded with a sneer. "You want to die, but I have no interest in accompanying you in your madness." The two of them battled again, but this actually could only be called a chase. Ling Han was pursuing, while Yu Yuan was running. He did not dare to confront his opponent at all. However, Ling Han had grasped both the regulations of time and space. If Yu Yuan merely focused on evasion, it would be very disadvantageous to him. Ultimately, there would be 1 or 2 times that he would be hit, causing him to be covered with injuries. If it were not for the fact that he was an 11th leaf and truly had strong battle prowess, he would have long since been caught up with by Ling Han and killed. Though Ling Han was in incredible pain, his cultivation level was soaring madly, and the aura that radiated from him was also becoming more and more frightening, as if he was a primitive demon god that was about to awaken. Yu Yuan had initially been waiting patiently for Ling Han to commit suicide, but the more he waited, the more anxious he became. Strange! Why had this person not turned into bits of blood yet? With how terrifying the ancestral king blood essence was, if one could not bear it, they would be crushed to death without need to wait for too long. Yet though Ling Han made for an extremely terrible sight, his aura was madly soaring, looking like it was about to spike up to the 11th leaf. What kind of monster was this guy? having been able to withstand the barrage of the ancestral king blood essence, he still managed to break through in the midst of battle. Though Yu Yuan was extraordinarily self-confident, he definitely would not do something so mad. For an 8th lotus to use ancestral king blood essence, and in battle at that, what else could this be but suicidal? Yet against all odds, Ling Han had survived. Boom! Right at this moment, dark clouds spread out in the skies, lightning flashing in their depths. The corners of Yu Yuan's mouth twitched. He was already rendered completely speechless. Ling Han had really performed a miracle that others wouldn't even dare to think about, and was about to break through to the 11th leaf. Yu Yuan had never felt fear, but now his legs were shaking as he felt an indescribable chill. How could there exist such a monster? How could it be? Ling Han laughed loudly and rushed up into the skies, leaving Yu Yuan behind. He wanted to first go through the heavenly tribulation. Yu Yuan only hesitated slightly before immediately turning around and running. Chapter 23-26, it's you. Chapter 23-26, it's you. Yu Yuan's first reaction was to run. It was very simple. The present Ling Han was already so terrifying, so just what kind of frightening extent would his strength reach after he survived the heavenly tribulation? If Yu Yuan did not flee now, he would just be waiting for death. However, this was very humiliating. He did not dare to accept even a battle of equals. Was this how a monarch star should act? But in the face of extremely realistic facts, Yu Yuan had still chosen to wisely save himself. If he stayed stubborn, it would just be suicide. Where there was life, there was hope. Run. His speed was swift, with him running as fast as lightning. A bolt of lightning struck down, forcefully blocking the course of his path. No, this was not a bolt of lightning, but rather a person. It was just that this person was entirely wrapped in lightning. Ling Han was bathing in the lightning crackling and dancing wildly. His hair fluttered in waves like he was a demon god. He asked calmly, "My good son, where are you planning to go?" Yu Yuan humphed coldly. "Could it be that you want to stop me? Be cautious about the merciless heavenly tribulation so that you don't get killed by it." After advancing into the 11th leaf, he had gained 9th lotus level battle prowess. This was heaven-defying. Thus, he would also be targeted by the heaven and earth, which would drop a terrifying great tribulation of lightning to get rid of this kind of heaven-defying criminal. Ling Han actually dared to ignore the heavenly tribulation and wanted to snipe Yu Yuan. Wasn't that just committing suicide? "It is not an easy matter to take my life," Ling Han said smilingly. "However, your life will be ended here today." He had exposed his secret of possessing ancestral king blood essence, so it was natural that there was no possible way he would allow Yu Yuan to continue living. "You had better solve your own problems first. If you still haven't died after the heavenly tribulation, I will make up for it with another strike." Yu Yuan's figure retreated rapidly, to say nothing of the fact that Ling Han's battle prowess could possibly increase explosively at any movement. Even if the former was inferior to Yu Yuan's, Yu Yuan would not dare move to attack the other man, either because Ling Han was presently undergoing a heavenly tribulation, so that would be equivalent to getting his own fingers burnt. This heavenly tribulation was very frightening. Ling Han had already used the indestructible true fluid to heal his body once, but beneath the lightning, he soon became battered and smashed again. On the surface, he was just a skeleton with bits of flesh hanging here and there. He could not look any worse. It could not be helped. The power of lightning was too violent, and even with his physique, he was just barely holding up to it. However, understanding and enlightenment rose up in Ling Han's heart. The indestructible heaven scroll still had room for improvement. At present, he naturally could not compare to a heavenly venerate in terms of power of creation, but the karmic life heavenly venerable also had his own limitations because he had never left the celestial realm and had only grasped the regulations of the celestial realm, And if it was a Genesis world, the regulations were actually even more abundant and complete. Ling Han had assimilated the regulations of 2 realms and also possessed the origin magic cube. Merely in terms of height of regulations, he was actually slightly superior to the karmic life heavenly venerable. This was just like how well he definitely could not compare to a heavenly venerate in battle prowess, but in terms of theoretical knowledge, he might be able to defeat all other heavenly venerates. Boom! A bolt of lightning descended. Because Ling Han was in deep thought, it landed solidly down on him. This bolt of lightning was extremely frightening, having turned into a massive fist. Once it landed, Ling Han immediately disappeared from sight, forcefully smashed into the ground. Yu Yuan saw this and took the opportunity to turn around and run. This was his only chance of survival, or even an opportunity to turn the tables around. It should be no problem for Ling Han to survive the heavenly tribulation, but he would definitely be covered with wounds and injured severely. Then Yu Yuan would only need to charge back, and Ling Han would still be dying in his hands. Hence he wanted to run. Pride and honor, and all the rest could be set aside. History had always been written by the victors. As long as Yu Yuan lived and Ling Han died, then the former would be the ultimate victor, and Ling Han would become a stepping stone on his path to greater strength. No one would remember that there had once existed such a person. Pum! Ling Han charged out of the ground. He used the fists of fury to parry the heavenly tribulation, using his extremely tiny body to face the latter head-on, yet could forcefully bear up to the might of the tribulation. My good son, don't run so fast. He used void space and stopped Yu Yuan in an instant, his eyes cold. Yu Yuan did not reply at all. His figure turned swiftly. His present goal was very simple, and that was to buy time. Ling Han chuckled, and the greatest eternity immortal physique took effect. Time passed, and eternity seemed to fly by in just a snap of his fingers. Yu Yuan discovered that everything around him had sped up, and was astonishingly fast at that. The falling leaves seemed to be descending like stars falling, and the ants crawled as fast as lightning, which was incredibly bizarre. His heart immediately jolted, and understanding dawned on him. It was not that everything had become fast, but rather he himself had slowed. Ling Han had slowed the passing of time for him. This guy was too terrifying, wasn't he? The regulations that he displayed consisted of as many as 3, including lightning, time and space, and added with the regulation of darkness. That would be for different types of regulations. It was not shocking that he had grasped 4 kinds of regulations. What was shocking was the regulations of time and space could both be considered the highest tier, and even a monarch star like Yu Yuan would find it extraordinarily difficult to comprehend them, and could only do so with the air of celestial medicines. However, time element celestial medicines were incredibly precious, and it was unknown how much would have to be used to cultivate to the height of 8th lotus. Why was it that only ancestral kings could cultivate various regulations extensively? Very simple, because only when one had reached the height of ancestral king would he be able to easily harvest celestial medicines. Yu Yuan roared in fury, and the regulations of light burst from his body, being pushed to the strongest level. Boom! The time flow on him finally returned to normal. Xiao, his figure, immediately sped up, leaving Ling Han far behind. Ling Han spread out his fingers and grasped down at Yu Yuan again. His move turned into a giant cage that descended on Yu Yuan. To say nothing of taking it head-on, Yu Yuan did not even dare to parry, because if he actively moved to attack Ling Han, that would be equivalent to interfering in the heavenly tribulation. In that case, a frightening bolt of lightning would immediately strike down on him, dragging him in as well. In fact, the might would even surpass Ling Han's own heavenly tribulation. It could not be helped. Who asked you to interfere in the heavenly tribulation? Yu Yuan gritted his teeth, and his potential exploded, speeding up his body to the limits. He darted out before the cage descended fully on him. This was very exhausting, yet allowed him to successfully escape this crisis. "My dear son, when will you stop evading?" Ling Han asked smilingly. If anyone from the 100 Battles Academy saw how pathetic Yu Yuan was now, who knew what kind of expressions they would have? Yu Yuan did not answer. His determination did not waver. Once the heavenly tribulation ended, that would be the moment that he would blow the horns to begin his counterattack. The two of them thus proceeded like this, one fleeing and the other pursuing, with time sweeping past swiftly. A day passed very quickly, and the heavenly tribulation was also close to its end, but the degree of its fearfulness was growing by leaps and bounds. The stronger the existence, the more he was not recognized by the heaven and earth, which would drop a punishment of lightning to erase him, especially in the case of the last 3 bolts. Every bolt of lightning turned into a massive seal, bearing an air of eternity and age, which was extremely frightening. Ling Han held up to it, but cracks had appeared on all his bones, and his whole person seemed like it would fall apart at the slightest breeze. Yu Yuan's eyes lit up, and he suddenly charged back from the distance. This was the time. Die. He drew out a divine sword of light. Wielder and sword merged as one, shooting out at Ling Han and wanting to deliver a fatal strike on him. Pa! Ling Han stretched out his hand and grabbed the sword's blade. Visibly, his blood and flesh were presently regrowing at an astonishing rate. It was really just the blink of an eye, and he had recovered his original appearance. His true original appearance. Why you are the trash from that super low-level dimension? Yu Yuan inhaled sharply. Ling Han's name was very famous in the foreign realm. In a single battle, he had killed over 100 ancestral kings through trickery, resulting in the interference of a heavenly venerate, yet he had actually still managed to flee. Now, the whole world was hunting him down. Yu Yuan had never thought that Ling Han would actually be standing in front of him. Chapter 23-27 Kill Him. Chapter 23-27 Kill Him. Yu Yuan finally understood why Ling Han possessed so much ancestral king blood. Fuck, he had tricked and killed 100 or so ancestral kings at once, so it was only natural that he possessed a huge amount of ancestral king blood. He didn't know why Ling Han had chosen to flee into the foreign realm, but he knew just how terrifying this person was. The latter had managed to kill countless ancestral kings, so what could a measly cultivator at the 11th leaf of the 8th lotus like him do? Ling Han smiled faintly. With a thought, he immediately reverted to his form as a demon. Even his aura was transformed. He had consumed another drop of indestructible, true fluid. Even though he couldn't return to his peak state in a flash, he could definitely unleash his full power for a short while. Yu Yuan gritted his teeth. He knew that Ling Han would definitely kill him to silence him. Thus, his only option was to fight as if his life depended on it. He rid himself of all other thoughts. Moreover, he indeed had a chance. After all, the heavenly tribulation that Ling Han had faced just then was for the 9th lotus. That was nowhere near powerful enough to kill ancestral kings. Boom! Yu Yuan combusted his blood essence. Like a pond that had been exhausted of water, his unwounded wing instantly shriveled and shrank. However, his aura rose explosively, and his already scorchingly bright eyes became explosively intense. He was truly going to fight with his life. This was a monarch star who was willing to combust his blood essence, suffer a fall in cultivation level, and even sustain irreparable wounds. The battle prowess that he obtained as a result would naturally be astounding. My chicken wing! Ling Han exclaimed in disappointment. Die! Yu Yuan roared. His golden hair billowed, transforming into countless arrows that contained the regulation of slaughter as they shot toward Ling Han. This was his most powerful attack. If he were on the receiving end of such an attack, he definitely wouldn't be able to dodge it, especially at such close range. His only option would be to await death, or perhaps he could charge forward and attempt to bring his opponent down with him. Pum! His attack hit its target, with all of the golden arrows slamming into Ling Han. Yu Yuan was delighted. Ling Han was truly far too arrogant. He surprisingly didn't dodge, allowing all of the arrows to hit him. Even though Yu Yuan had paid an enormous price, with his cultivation level possibly falling continuously for the next few years, this would be worth it as long as he could defeat Ling Han. It would bring him boundless pride and glory. After all, this was someone who had killed more than 100 ancestral kings. Moreover, Ling Han possessed countless treasures. If he obtained these, not only could he accelerate his cultivation, perhaps he could even obtain the chance to become a heavenly venerate. Right at this moment, Ling Han's jeering voice suddenly traveled into his ears. "Why are you so delighted? Your smile is almost stretching to your ears." "What?" Yu Yuan's jaw fell in shock. His face was filled with disbelief. How is this possible? Ling Han had clearly been hit by his arrows, destructive arrows that were brimming with regulation of slaughter. Such an attack should have killed him in an instant, yet he could still speak? Moreover, not only was he speaking, but even his voice was calm and composed. It was as if he were completely unaffected. Perhaps there's someone at the same cultivation level who can defeat and kill me. However, that person definitely isn't a piece of trash such as you, Ling Han said in an apathetic voice. Looking over, it was as if his body had transformed into an intangible volume of space. Even though the arrows had struck him, they had failed to cause any damage. Yu Yuan involuntarily gulped. Despair spread across his face. His opponent had a far superior grasp of regulations. In fact, Yu Yuan hadn't even realized that his attacks had failed to land. The gulf between them was indescribably large. Don't feel so smug. We're brimming with prodigies here. So what does it matter that you've defeated me now? One day, you'll die at the hands of a prodigy from this realm. In the not-so-distant future, the elites from this realm will also charge into the celestial realm and massacre everyone there. Yu Yuan was roaring with crazed laughter. He showed no signs of begging for his life. I'll prevent the arrival of this day. However, it's a shame that you won't live long enough to see it. Ling Han threw a punch, striking Yu Yuan's face. The Monarch Star from the 100 Battles Academy instantly exploded into a cloud of blood and flesh. With a grab, Yu Yuan's spatial god tool landed in Ling Han's hand. "Hand that over." There was a cold humph, and a man from the demon race had already shot over from the distance. His eyes were fixed on the spatial god tool in Ling Han's hand. "Xiao, xiao, xiao, xiao." Another 4 people dashed over, with not even half a second separating their arrivals. Ling Han pondered for a moment before saying, "Oh, so it was you 5 who caused the collapse of the spatial passageway? Moreover, it was also you people who were hunting Yu Yuan, causing him to suffer greatly? Since you already know, why don't you hurry up and obediently hand over that item? Perhaps we can leave you with a full corpse," one person said. The 5 people were all at the 3rd leaf of the 9th lotus. Thus, any one of them could easily suppress Ling Han. There were only 3 minor levels in the ascending origin, tier small accomplishment, great accomplishment, and consummate level. The gulf between each minor level was significant, and the notion that king tiers were invincible at the same cultivation level and that emperor tiers could challenge those 1 tier above them was no longer relevant. King tiers and emperor tiers were indeed stronger than ordinary cultivators at the same cultivation level. However, even monarch tiers would be unable to suppress those a tier above them. Instead, they could only remain invincible at the same cultivation level. Only monarch stars could challenge those a tier above them. Thus, any one of the 5 people at the 3rd leaf of the 9th lotus could easily suppress Ling Han, who was only at the 8th lotus. He couldn't do sh*T, no matter how freakish he was. Ling Han shrugged and said, "I'm going to die anyway, so why don't I take a gamble?" "In that case, your death will be torturous beyond imagination," a single-horned demon said. This was a weird group of people. 3 of them were demons, and 2 of them were angels. In normal situations, they would be loath to even stand next to each other. Ling Han chuckled and said, "You people couldn't even capture Yu Yuan, yet I managed to kill him. That being the case, is your attempt to kill me anything but a wild dream? Different people have different strengths. A superior battle prowess doesn't imply superior speed." One of the angels said. One of his wings was larger than the other, and they were more so covered in a lifeless gray color. "You mean I'm not fast enough?" Ling Han mused. "Enough nonsense. Capture him," the single-horned demon said. He reached over to grab at Ling Han. With a flash, Ling Han instantly summoned tens of thousands of illusions. The single-horned demon lashed out with his palm, causing the illusions to shatter one after another. However, the 5 elites all furrowed their brows as they looked into the distance. Almost 2 kilometers away from them, Ling Han was standing completely unscathed. He even waved at them, saying, "That's enough playing for today. Goodbye." These people were all at the 3rd leaf of the 9th lotus, and Ling Han was aware that he was certainly no match for them, even though he had also advanced to the 9th lotus. Facing off against them would still be an uphill battle, to say nothing of battling against all 5 of them. Simply rivaling one of them would already be a huge feat. "Regulations of space!" the 5 elites exclaimed. Frustration washed over their faces. The other monarch star had already been troublesome enough, evading capture for over 50 years. However, this person was even more troublesome. He could actually wield the regulations of space. This caused them to feel a sense of despair. How in the world could they capture him? Unless the gulf between their cultivation level was immense, capturing Ling Han would be simply impossible. However, those at the 11th leaf of the 8th lotus were powerful enough to rival those at the 1st leaf of the 9th lotus. In other words, their major tier was essentially identical. Thus, their attempts to capture Ling Han were destined to be futile. In terms of the ability to flee alone, the regulations of space were, in fact, even more impressive than the regulations of time.